you got it now. Don't worry. I'll go ahead and give us a countdown for the actual recording, so don't feel like it's it's the end of the road now just because we went live. All right, but we are officially live. So Facebook's got us and YouTube's got us. We're not doing Patreon exclusive streaming. So you're welcome, everybody watching.
When you said thank you, you're welcome, my dog's ears perked up.
He's excited.
He's happy to be here.
But Seth and I were just talking just briefly about some of the topics we're going to be going over here and, just getting acquainted. So real quick here, we'll give Theron, what do you say, Morpheus? Another 2 minutes?
Yeah.
5
Remember,
minutes?
you only got me for about an hour tonight.
Exactly. I don't want to go too far or cut it too close. All right. So he says he's setting up.
And I'm already jamming on a Guinness. Had my 2 bowls of ramen.
Well, don't introduce your damn drink yet.
The tried and true pre-drink meal, 2 bags of ramen.
Speaking of which, let me double check while we have this second and a half before we actually start recording. Let me go ahead and check the poll for Twitter and for Instagram as to what whiskey I'm going to be drinking tonight.
Last I saw was Irish.
Last you saw. All right, what do we got here? So Twitter, we got Loch Lomond. All right, so that's a Scotch. What do we got for Instagram?
I was wondering where all my whiskey glasses went, and I realized they're all on my paint desk because I've been in here like every night this week drinking and painting.
So they're all dirty.
Yeah, I have like 4 whiskey tumblers in here.
Nasty bitch. All right, so yeah, Irish by 67% according to Instagram. All right, Irish it is.
Because it's the month.
It is the
month
month
for it.
I sent a picture to Morpheus, and it was of 2 cases of Guinness, and he was like, "Dear Christ!" I was like, "Well, I can't risk running out as St. Patty's Day is like right around the corner. I feel like everybody's gonna be running for it."
I bought an 8-pack today, just for casual.
No, that's not gonna be
general
enough.
hydration.
Not gonna be enough, bro.
I also got 2 bottles of bourbon.
I got 2. I got 1 bourbon, 1 standard Irish, then a pretty decent Irish, which is what I'll be drinking tonight, I guess. Proper 12. And then I got a couple scotches as well. I went kind of all out since we just got paid.
Yeah. I also bought 2 issues of White Dwarf, which is a Warhammer magazine. Normally don't get those.
All right. Well, it doesn't look like Theron is here just yet.
I mean, he can always join in.
Yeah.
Just tell him to start his recording before he joins.
Well, you're in the chat too. Go ahead and let him know before we get this started.
Fair enough.
Oh, we got Mike Dean already in the chat. What's up, Mike?
We have people commenting?
We got Jesus You Luscious, Bailey's is my vote, and we got busting out the Guinnesses. Oh wait, I read that backwards. It was busting out the Guinnesses, Bailey's is my vote, and Jesus You Luscious. My B, Mike. It's good to have you here. Appreciate you joining us tonight. All right. Like I said, we're just waiting on Theron as I finish getting set up, but I'm pretty much good to go. Morpheus,
I'm
good?
ready whenever.
All right. Seth?
Let's do it.
All right, let's do it. All right, here comes the countdown for you beautiful bastards. Set your recording in 3, 2, 1. Boom. Welcome to the Scuttlebutt Podcast. Seth Connor in the house tonight. Morpheus. And we got our soundboard I forgot about. Morpheus Bratwurst returning as part of the 3 Musketeers. We're still waiting on our buddy Theron. And of course, you know who it is. So what's going on, guys? We have a little tradition here, though. I got to explain this to Seth. We didn't even go over this in the pregame. I was just so excited. We jumped right into it as though we were already recording. Like it was without a hitch. So Morpheus, we'll catch you up. But first, we'll go around the table. So we'll start with Morpheus so that Seth gets a little comfortable here. Morpheus, what you got? What are you drinking on tonight?
Right now, I'm just sipping on the old standard Guinness.
Old standard Guinness. Is it because it's March?
Nah, it's just the beer of choice.
Beer of choice. All right.
Every month of the year.
Same. It's always stocked in my fridge. There's never a day that my fridge is empty or doesn't have Guinness rather in it. All right. So then for myself, due to a popular demand from Instagram and Twitter, we have a Irish whiskey tonight versus a Scotch, and the Irish whiskey that ended up getting chosen was Proper 12. It's a triple distilled, which kind of is all Irish whiskey. I'm just reading the label here. It says a smooth blend with hints of vanilla, honey, and toasted wood. So before we go ahead and crack that open and have that ASMR pour, Seth, what are you drinking on tonight?
You guys might be a little disappointed because what I'm drinking is a ginger lime soda water.
Ginger lime soda water. I like the flavor profile of that.
But it's lacking something, is what you're going to say, right?
Yes,
I think it needs a bit of a higher proofage.
Yeah.
I'm glad.
Now, if I were to pick something that I would normally drink this month, it would probably just be a simple Bushmills, with maybe a little soda. I don't know, but I don't drink a whole lot of alcohol anymore. Strange. It used to be my thing, but I kind of lost my taste for it after doing a little bit of what we're going to talk about tonight. So
I was gonna say, is that maybe a contributing or like a side effect from?
Yeah, it is. So if you don't want to stop drinking or lose your flavor for certain beverages, then may not be your thing tonight.
Huh? Well, that's what do you think, Morpheus? Like 95% of the audience? Is that
I'm intrigued.
Well, while I'm still getting, Theron, he's waiting on the StreamYard, he says. Did you guys not check your damn emails?
I didn't get it the first time you sent it.
All right, well, I sent it to him twice. Now I'm sending it in the chat. So hopefully Theron will be joining us, ladies and gentlemen. But in case
He uses
his
phone anyway.
Yeah, that's true. In case you didn't read the outline, Morpheus, I don't know. Did you do your homework this time?
Definitely.
I like the confidence in that. I could already tell it was coming.
Absolutely, because I never shoot from the hip.
Ever. It's not your thing at all.
I'm very prepared all the time.
Well, for those that did read the outline and maybe had somewhat of an idea of what we'll be discussing tonight, I'm still going to keep teasing. I'm not going to drop it just yet. Seth, do you want to give a quick introduction to the audience members, and maybe that will hint a little bit further as to what we'll be talking about tonight?
Sure. So I, like you all, I have a history in the military, so I'm a veteran. Did my service with the Marine Corps in 2001 to 2005. Did the whole OIF-2 thing. Did a deployment to Japan previous to that. Then went to Iraq and caught the Fallujah fun time there. And then when I came back,
Is the Fallujah fun kind of like the Kung Pao flu?
Something like that. Yeah, it's a very sarcastic term, I guess. But ended up coming back and writing a book about it. Actually, essentially what I did was just put my journal or my memoirs together and published it. And it kind of came out at a very relevant time. So I caught some attention from Jon Stewart and The Daily Show. They wanted to have me on. I was not going to have my debut be with Jon Stewart. You just don't know what's going to happen. You have no idea what's going to happen. But then it was also, there's an interesting thing going on in Berkeley, California, where there's some organization called Code Pinkos that were trying to kick out the recruiters in Berkeley. So we wrote a very interesting kind of conservative piece that caught some attention there too. But, fast forward, I had my share of PTSD, dealing with PTSD, brought a lot of baggage into my marriage and now former marriage, and tried everything, tried whatever the VA is going to throw my way, whatever pills are going to throw my way. But I was definitely medicating with alcohol. Never got to the alcoholic stage where I needed it every day, but definitely would medicate when shit got hard. So needless to say, the marriage eventually ended, and the straw on that camel's back was when I found the help of psychedelics. And so
Oh boy.
now, so I've had a few years of experience with that, working with different plant medicine. And what I found was that there was a lot of great information out there, but it still lacked, or there just wasn't enough emphasis on people preparing for their experience and then people integrating back into their world after having these like incredible experiences with psychedelics. And so I was like, hey, I'm gonna get into the executive coaching space. I want to coach entrepreneurs, executive business owners, and veterans too, and kind of provide that thing that's missing, fill that need of preparation beforehand, weeks beforehand, and then weeks after they have the experience, just so that they don't work with the medicine and then go have a worse care of life afterwards, because a lot of times that happens. There's nobody there to help them. They just had this amazing experience. They don't know what to do with it. And they're kind of just left maybe feeling more shitty afterwards. They call it the Avatar blues. I don't know if you guys remember, there's a time when Avatar came out, years ago. And people would go and watch
guy
it.
Avatar?
Yeah,
or
the blue
Arrowhead
one.
Avatar.
No. The blue guys. And people, it was such a revolutionary movie that people walked out of it, going, oh my God, what did I just experience? And then they go into this place of depression because life doesn't look anything like that. And they started coining it the Avatar blues. And so a lot of times that kind of same thing happens after a psychedelic experience. But anyway, that's the long version of the intro.
Yeah. No, I actually heard of that. That's hilarious too. Every time I hear it.
Avatar was okay.
But it was awesome then. I mean, it's kind of
guess.
like, okay, it's okay now. But back then it was like, they did a pretty good job with it. They waited, I think, like 2 decades to actually do that movie because the technology wasn't there yet to be able to produce something that looked that great,
I thought
CGI
the
and
story
stuff.
was weak.
Oh, this story. Hey, I'm not going to argue with you there. Like, that's to each his own on that one.
These blue people, they have to connect ponytails or something.
It's just Fern Gully in space.
Basically. Theron!
That's right.
I made it.
Yeah. Speaking of which, Seth, during that, I don't know if you were watching the stream, but we were having some technical difficulties, but we got him. We got Morpheus. We got Theron. We're all the Three Musketeers and Seth are here and ready to go.
And
Nice.
co-pilot Nook.
And Nook. Yes. Sorry. Don't feel left out, Noki. I'm sorry.
How do you spell gnocchi? Is that like the pasta?
It's like the pasta with the G.
Yes.
He's actually sniffing by the scorpion tanks right now, though, so he's taking a break.
See, that's the
That's
thing
awesome.
with not having your camera on is nobody can see all the exotic pets that you have. You started with the very traditional dog, and then you didn't give access to anything else, for everybody watching.
No one's really out right now doing anything. The tailless
They're
whip
not acting
scorpion
very
is...
exotic.
The tailless whip scorpion
They weren't
is...
shitting in their fucking cage.
Yeah, right. That was a once-in-a-lifetime thing we saw there.
Well, nonetheless, we now have everybody here, so I feel like our show has. Theron, did you get everything there? Did you hear Hopefully you heard
Yeah.
everything.
Oh yeah. I got
Okay.
the whole intro.
Awesome. Real quick, we'll go ahead and bring you in. What are you drinking on tonight?
The bog standard vodka cranberry. You guys switched it up on me and started an hour early, so I had to rush home.
Tried and true. What do you mean an hour early?
But
It's
you're
always-
wearing my favorite jacket.
No, we've been doing it at like 5 to 6 for the last couple weeks.
Yeah,
Morpheus?
we have.
Have we? Okay,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
We normally
I've
do
been,
8 hour time.
I've been working real hard. I'm sorry, guys. Then.
But it's my bad. It was right in the schedule. I just didn't bother to read it.
It's okay. You're wearing my favorite jacket, so how you doing? How you doing, big boy? You and the stealer of souls there behind you.
Yeah, right.
Right, hanging out with my buddy Manny.
Manny.
Our running joke of his mask and jacket, or just jacket and goggles, whatever that is, right?
Those soulless eyes.
All right, boys. Well, who wants to start it off? Does anybody want to start it off with either the intro question or into the outline question while I bring up the outline so I remember exactly my sources here?
I'll do the outline question because the outline question was what again?
Never mind. Let me
Say,
actually.
great stalling for time
Yeah.
there.
Let me go ahead and back us up then. Let me go
Let me,
ahead and
let
back
me.
us up.
Yeah, I'll do the outline. What?
Shut
Where did I find
Stop it.
that?
I will mute you. Stop it. Stop it. I'll mute you. No. Let me actually back up because I introduced there, and sorry we got a little confused there with technical difficulties and not having everybody right away and doing the Instagram pre-show and live streaming two things separately. But I forgot my whiskey wisdom.
We have a large production people.
We do. we have a lot of wheels going.
Lot of
So
moving
There's a
parts
huge
here.
crew, tons of cogs going on. Got to keep all the gears moving.
I was getting my makeup put on like 3 hours ago for this.
by that he means there's zero production crew and there's zero cogs on the wheel. That's what he means by all of that. But here we go. Sorry. We'll focus
Only
up,
the
guys,
people
because
lucky
tonight.
enough watching us live get to see all these crazy prosthetics I'm wearing.
Right. Well, I told Seth, like I warned him that you are the face, you are the Brad Pitt of the show, so he has a little bit of competition here. But honestly, I think it's pretty close. He's got the beard, and Theron, I'm feeling like you're a little naked without this addition. Now I'm feeling
That's
like
true.
You need to grow out this Brad Pitt look here.
I don't know. I don't like the whole beard thing for me. I think it looks great on other people, but it just looks really patchy and terrible whenever I try to grow a beard. It doesn't actually come through.
Yeah, it's like when I try to grow a mustache, like it kind of, does a weird pedophile kind of look.
I knew you were
Just
gonna
get
say it.
the little wispy stash.
Wisp, that's a good word, a good adjective. Wispy.
Wispy.
Well, I can't
for
grow it on my
everyone's
head,
knowledge.
so not very well. So I get the patchy thing now on my head. So now I just grow it out here.
So,
So
it's
everyone's
basically
tracking
like the best,
The
better of
co-pilot
the
has
two equals.
ejected the plane.
Oh, you talking about Noki? It has ejected? All right. Well, good riddance, Noki. I guess you didn't like where the show was headed tonight.
He took a
because we didn't
nap
do
and then
whiskey.
he was like gone.
Well, sorry, guys. Okay, so back on track. Whiskey Wisdom. For those that weren't watching the live stream prior or weren't voting on Twitter or on Instagram, we have Irish whiskey tonight. We have the proper 12, so I'm going to go ahead and pour that up and give a quick whiskey review because everything about tonight is not whiskey related, surprisingly.
I've seen the proper 12 at the store and debated on buying it.
Ooh, it looks nice, so I haven't tried it yet. We're going to have an
Yeah,
honest...
sucker
yeah,
for
we're
Soon
gonna
to
have
see
an
if it's
honest.
proper.
If it'll do it proper.
How was that uncorking? Come through okay?
Yeah, I've heard better.
Crispy.
I've heard that.
That's my new thing. I'm just going to be really critical of everything.
Well, apparently, the last episode with the negative Nancy's attitude, actually did pretty well. People were enjoying the negative Nancy, so maybe that's the secret. Everybody's talking
The
about
only
positivity
negative
of it.
Nancy was you.
Well, shut
Yeah,
up,
you
okay?
negative Nancy. We were trying to, talk 3D printers and stuff.
We were having a great time talking about all the things we're gonna buy with our new set of stimulus money coming through.
And then Hermes was
true.
like, hey, guys, we have an outline to stick to. And we were like, bug off, mate.
Fuck the outline.
Get
Fuck
out of
sticking
here
to
with
that.
your structure.
That's true. That is true. We didn't even touch on one thing either of it. But
Didn't we?
no. But
Multimedia platforms.
real quick here, I'm getting a nice nose. You guys aren't witness to this. And Mike, I do see you in the chat here. He says he misses the lights out silhouette look for me, and he'd also get a little. He'd also get to look at this bottle and this glass that I'm holding up here. So I don't know. Maybe for the after party show, Mike, if you want to stick around for that. The live stream isn't going to be interrupted, guys, so don't feel like you have to worry about clicking anything else. We're just going to go into that. Maybe I'll go ahead and turn on my my camera for that, and you guys can see what we're drinking on tonight. But off the nose here, right away, super vanilla. So much vanilla, it's almost. I'm afraid to drink it because it's going to be a little too sweet. So Morpheus, I think this is probably right up your wife's alley with the peanut butter. What's that?
Was it
Uh,
Screwball?
Screwball. There we go.
We do
Yeah,
love
right.
vanilla.
Right up that alley. So
Vanilla missionary old life.
right up you and your wife's alley, I guess.
Right up her alley. Just right up in there.
And in terms of cost, it's not a very costly bottle. It's a pretty standard Irish. It's only about like $35. So let's see how she tastes. Come on, Theron. Where's that? Where's the drum roll there?
I was so enthralled. I was waiting. I didn't even think to do the drum roll.
God damn, let me tell you, is that smooth. And no prominent flavors that are overpowering in any way. Appreciate you, Theron. Appreciate you.
There you go.
He came through.
Like he
Gosh,
had it
that's-
pulled up.
It's so light that it's hard to actually distinguish any specific flavor. The only thing I get is the nose right away of vanilla, but it's actually not that sweet, and it's really smooth. It's really nice. Very solid whiskey. Second sip.
What's the proof?
Oh, good question. Proof is a 40%, so 80 proof. Second sip before we give her a rating.
I just love watching Seth. He looks so into this.
He's just trying not to fall asleep.
Well, I was curious. Do you like buy a new bottle for every podcast, or is this just like a special occasion? You buy a new bottle, or have you had this one for a while?
I did just buy it today. I would say we do at least 4 a month, so that's 4 bottles a month, and I definitely buy more
once
than
a
that.
week.
I was gonna say I definitely buy more than that.
We
So I don't know how I
record
should answer
about
that question.
Once a week.
Yeah, I don't know how I should answer that question. I bought
Yeah.
6 bottles of whiskey today, and that will definitely last me at least until tomorrow. So.
Through the weekend. Yeah.
You know what we need to do, boys? We need to do us like a bottle episode
We actually are. We have, and if you ever read the fucking outlines, man.
where we each have our own individual bottle, and we just kill the bottles each, and the users get to watch us slowly fall into chaos.
There you go. Yeah,
I'm
that's
gonna
exactly
eat 3
what
bags of ramen for that one.
That's what everybody
that's-
wants to see.
That could only be live streamed because no one's going to tune into that later.
Mike Dean wants in.
Nonetheless, yeah. Oh, gosh. All right. So nonetheless, solid whiskey, very smooth as expected for an Irish whiskey. Nothing overpowering, no ethanol scent or taste. I'm gonna give this a solid 4 out of 5. 4 out of 5. Nothing off-putting. Anybody could drink that, and I'm gonna be sipping on that tonight. So let's see how she feels. She tastes good. She smells good. Let's see how she feels later. But
All right, let's see how you're liking it by the end of the episode.
How
exactly.
she feels. Like, are you gonna put your dick in it?
I'm gonna lather myself in the whiskey. I'm gonna pour half the bottle on myself. We're just gonna go from there.
I mean, with the alcohol, to a degree, there'd be a level of evaporation happening, kind of like hand sanitizer on your hands. So if you were to put it on your dick, as long as it didn't go down the urethra.
Why do I hear experience in? Your,
I was going to say, this doesn't sound hypothetical
No,
at all.
but imagine it wouldn't feel terrible.
He had a buddy swim.
So
Who told
long
him
as
once?
it doesn't get in the urethra. That's what's gonna hurt.
Oh Jesus!
You ever
All
get
right.
soap in there? That's not a good time.
I think anybody with a dick has eventually got it, but we are again veering off course. Let's grab these fucking antlers and let's pull her back. Mike, yes, the dick will fit in the neck of the bottle every time. I promise you.
Maybe not afterwards, but beforehand, absolutely. And then you're in there.
I was talking about during the whole time. I was talking about. Oh, is it just me? Just me? Oh.
Well,
That's
once
a
you get it
unique
in
way
there,
to rate
it's
alcohol.
not coming out.
Got my dick stuck in a bottle, right? I think that's a song somewhere.
That'd be a
I've
trip to
ever
the
heard
ER, wouldn't it?
Yeah, right. So we got whiskey review. Morpheus, you want to save yours for the end?
I got 5 options pulled up in front of me right now.
Do you have one pertaining to the outline, maybe, perhaps?
Not at all.
Yes, because that outline was what again?
Oh my God.
God.
All right. True story, Dean. True story, Mike. All right, guys.
What
So
is that comment?
I'm trying to do too many things at once. So rather than doing that, I'm going to focus our attention back up here. And yeah, so since nobody wants to read the outlines, I'll just go ahead and start her off here. All right. So I had a couple questions. All right. And I didn't know how I was going to start the show off. I didn't know. That's maybe why we've been.
Obviously.
I was going to say maybe that's why we've been delaying a little bit here and why we took as long as we did. But and the reason for that is it's a big topic. It is a big topic for me. If anybody's been listening to the cast recently, what was it? The episode 40, we sort of got into a little rant, didn't we, boys? And we had
Mini rant.
Yeah, I mean, we had a little discussion about suicide in the military. And
Oh yeah, that was one that we filmed together, right?
correct. Yeah, when we
Gotcha,
had Bo,
yeah.
you, me, yep, and then
That was a
Theron.
good one.
Yeah, and that's the feedback we've received as well. So I don't think the timing could have been any more perfect to have you on set. I mean, we had planned this for a little while prior, but we for the audience members who didn't catch the pregame or weren't listening in or privy to this information, there's a couple groups that we are parts of as active duty members, and one of them is a veterans community, and that's where Seth and I met. He had shared an article about VA funding for psychedelic research. Specifically, I think it was MDMA, correct, Seth?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
And as soon as I saw that, it was more than a breath of fresh air, because as we've ranted before, as we've shared in previous episodes, the importance of mental health in the military, and specifically in solving it and actually solving the problem of suicide and depression, PTSD in the military. It's a huge topic. It's one I take, very seriously, and it always hits home every time we start talking about it, or every time I start reading about it. So, like I said, it couldn't have been better timing for this. And some of the comments and some of the emails that I've received thus far leading up to this from those that are reading the outlines, guys, is
There are dozens of us.
Dozens.
some of the one of the main themes that I've seen come up here is the suicide statistic, right, for the veteran population. We have currently, of the 22 veterans committing suicide a day, and Seth, I even saw it on your website or your YouTube, that you had it in a sentence. It was like, that's horrific. And as soon as I read that, I was like, yeah, it is. And what's worse is the response or lack thereof, right? And I was curious, you being a veteran, I don't want to say prior Marine, current Marine, right? You're always once a Marine, always a Marine, right?
That's right. That's right.
I just what was your experience when you were in, or maybe right after getting out? Were you, especially having the history of PTSD that you have, what was your experience with that?
Yeah. It's interesting. And I just I'll quickly, that number 22 has actually just recently changed to 18 on a daily average, which obviously is still not good, but it's getting better. And I would like to think that it does have something to do with some of this, veterans seeking help holistically in other directions other than the VA. But anyway, when I go ahead.
I was going to say, why do you say other than the VA? For those, again, we got a lot of civilian listeners overseas and around the world. Why do you say other than the VA?
Because a lot of these veterans that are committing suicide are still getting help or trying to get help from the VA. And unfortunately, the answer up until maybe, recently or there's reform happening, but it's got to be much greater than what it is now and what's currently happening. But traditionally it's been, here's a little talk therapy, here's a little group therapy, and here's some pills to take. Right. In fact, God, I can't remember who I was talking to. But they said that when they called up the mental health services at the VA, the first thing they're asking is, so are you calling to talk to somebody, or do you just want some pills? Kind of thing. Like we'll just write you a prescription, which is fascinating in a very dark way. But for me personally, when I got back, I had the hyper arousal, hyper awareness, where loud noise makes you hit the floor or makes you jump, right? One of the big things I also noticed that I could barely drive when I got back. Not well. Like I get on the freeways in Southern California and I couldn't get above 60 miles per hour because that's what we drove in our Humvees over in Fallujah, and that that the surrounding areas is we just never got above 60 miles an hour. And you're always scanning, right? You're always scanning for some sort of odd looking thing on the side of the road because we experienced an IED the day before or something like that. And so you're always in this place of being hyper vigilant. The other thing was, I never really understood what depression was or anxiety. And probably about a year or two after I got out is when I started feeling those things. And I'm like, I had no language for it. I didn't know what it was about. I didn't know what I was feeling. But I didn't have the education enough to know, that's what's happening. It's a byproduct of the PTSD. So that was kind of, that just having like relationship issues, faulty relationship patterns, maybe not having, great relationships with women and, or having one and not knowing how to be a value add to that relationship. So, they walk away from it going, man, I don't know if that was really the best thing for me. But I would keep having a relationship with the same woman, just different face because of the issues that I had going on inside of me. Mm-hmm. So that's what mine kind of looked like. But it was about 10 years ago when I started actually, which was 4 or 5 years after I got out, that I actually started seeking help. And all I knew was, counseling, talk therapy. That's all but it was even years after that I finally, the VA threw some pills at me and said, hey, take these. And there's the guys that are committing suicide, a lot of them are still on these medications and it's just not helping. It might help for a few months, it might help for a year. And then your body builds up a tolerance and they either switch your medication and you have a bad experience and you're still left feeling like shit. Mm-hmm. So I get why these guys are offering themselves.
Yeah. Unfortunately. Yeah. Right. It's interesting just to touch on that point real quick that you mentioned, the term, like the span of effectiveness of medication. And I'm guessing, was it antidepressants? Was it, anti-anxiety, medication that they were putting you on as classic, I guess, for military DOD response, right?
Right. Yeah. I'm pretty sure it was an antidepressant, some sort of SSRI, but yeah, who knows what it was? It was some generic something or another, but regardless, it was.
Sure. Well, the only reason sorry.
No, go ahead.
The only reason I bring it up is, prior to the episode, obviously doing some reading here, I was looking at the other side of the board because I wanted, we've all heard, horror stories of, side effects, right? You see commercials for antidepressants. It's like side effects may include yada yada yada, depression. Suicide, right? Yeah, depression, suicide. It's like, whoa. Yeah, last time I checked, Advil side effect wasn't more pain.
Right. That's a good point.
You take enough of it though.
Yeah, but so when I was looking at the other side of things, and I wanna ask you obviously how you got into it, but when I looked at the other side of things leading up to this, it was what is the comparison, right, of statistical efficacy between alternative therapies is what we'll call it right now, just broadly, and standard practices or standard treatments currently, right? And looking at a lot of it and getting into the weeds of it that we can maybe touch on a little later in the episode. But the main thing was basically the difference was standard practices is 50-50. You either, if you're a severe case, you might have a 50% chance of getting better, but you might have a 50% chance of getting worse. And that's compared to a placebo. So even if you're taking nothing at all, you still have a 50% chance of getting better, and you still have a 50% chance of getting worse. and that is again in severe cases, and it goes even further for mild or moderate cases. And this is specifically depression and PTSD. It does break down differently for anxiety and so on. But I looked obviously at what we're going to be talking about even more in depth tonight, the alternative therapies and the psychedelic routes. And there's again, because it's not quite as large of a foundation of data that we can pull from what we can pull from, it ranges anywhere between 60 and 80. The two numbers that I keep getting very frequently, depending on who's running the study, is 68% compared to placebo and 75%, all the way up to 75% compared to placebo. So that right there, even compared to the 50-50, is quite a bit different, in statistical difference between what we're currently using and what we're not. And the biggest difference that I saw compared to everything across the board was negative side effects. The negative side effects of current standard treatments, as we said, can be worsening of depression and worsening of suicidal ideations, along with body toxicity, organ toxicity, so on and so many other side effects that are, just as unfortunate or, very close to as unfortunate. What I didn't find in a lot of the data for alternative therapies is body toxicity and negative side effects in relation to worsening of depression, worsening of addiction, worsening of suicidal ideations. And to me, to me, that just rings, I don't know, at least a couple bells and raises a couple flags. I'm curious, you being more on the side of the treatment side, if I'm not mistaken, correct? What the fuck's going on here? Why? How is this not known or more known, or why am I just reading about this? What the fuck is going on here?
Yeah. You're opening up a can of worms there, man. It's like a 60, almost 70-year story right there. Why we're not using this regularly? But you're right. It's some of the side effects that I had when I was on it was like complete numbed out. Like I couldn't feel shit. Typically when I'd watch maybe like, a good movie, a good war movie or something like Saving Private Ryan, and I'm moved to tears, I wasn't getting any of that anymore. I was just blank, right? I think they call it like emotional clogging or something like that, or clumping, I think maybe is what it's called, but it's just where you lose the capacity to really have much emotions at all. Loss of libido, more anxiety is what I felt at times, but just like it was just you kind of feel like a shell of a person. So at some point I tried to like wean myself off, which some people do, and it's not a good idea at all. And instead they moved me to like some sort of other different type of prescription. And what they didn't say was, hey, with this type of prescription, you shouldn't have any alcohol. And I ended up going out with some friends for this guy's birthday party. Ended up essentially blacking out, like just losing, having any idea what I was doing, and ended up quite nearly getting arrested for trying to break into somebody's house. Like it got bad. It got dark.
Holy shit.
Yeah. And so, we just knew something was something had to change. So I first started to, my first like answer was to go look at getting my medical marijuana card. Now I was in kind of a hyper religious, rigid kind of community. And so this was not okay. And especially wasn't okay with my ex-wife. And so that didn't last very long. But that was my answer. Something was drawing me towards this as an answer at some point. But, it took years later for me to hear about microdosing, what they're doing at Johns Hopkins, which they've been working on that stuff for decades. The research on folks with anxiety and depression and addiction, like it's got the highest cessation rate working with psilocybin. So many people are quitting smoking, or folks that had problem with alcoholism, they kind of like, even after one experience, aren't dealing with that anymore. They don't have the cravings for it anymore, that kind of thing. So, and the fact that it's not addictive, so it's not like it's an answer that they get you addicted to. You know, with
it's not
SSRIs, it's
trading.
like you can't get off of it.
Sure. It's not.
Yeah, it's not trading one for another.
Yeah.
Well, we
Exactly.
talked about that the other day. Even people are always like, "Oh, don't go get addicted to like mushrooms." And it's like mushrooms aren't really something that you could get addicted to. Like if
No.
you do it after the fact, like I don't want to do that again for a little bit. Like I'm tired.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go.
That was an experience.
Nap. Yeah, exactly. It's like,
Yeah.
whew, that was something.
Well, the interesting thing is that it's not when people have drug problems. We'll just, general blanket statement. When people suffer from some sort of drug addiction, it's typically because they're using something like opiates, and they're trying to avoid their shit. They're trying to numb. They're actually trying to numb out. They want to numb the pain, which I totally get, but it's just wreaks havoc on your system. And then that's where we get this stigma of like, the drug addict and, living in a box or something, and spending whatever money they have on drugs and stuff like that. But the thing with psychedelics is that
down by the river.
that's what I'm saying, down by the river. But you work with psychedelics and it doesn't allow you to run away from your problems. Like it brings you face to face with your issues and says, here, let me show you how to fix this. Yeah, you feel great, but at the same time, you're getting in touch with yourself and getting through some of that like tough shit.
Very introspective.
Yeah. It gives you solutions, they always say like the solutions are inside of us already. We just need to access them, And so I think that's what the psychedelics really help with that. But I'm getting a little woo woo there, but
No, we're gonna get it. We're gonna get it tonight.
good.
Just remember, if you don't want to have a bad trip, don't look at the scary shit.
Don't look at this.
Just don't look at it. Shove it in a corner. You'll deal with that later.
Yeah. And don't look at the mirror.
Don't look at the mirror.
Yeah, or the TV, the reflections in the TV, right, Hermes?
Yeah.
Whoa.
Oh
that
man,
fan up there means to do me harm. But he's up there, and that's okay.
yeah, it's well, as you were saying that, it's that, especially that point of the answers or the solutions are basically inside, right? We have the solutions within ourselves. Do you think that is a perspective that comes from the psychedelic, by and large, like just by nature rather, versus maybe some other form of therapy where it's the community or it's the compassion or, the actual SSRIs or whatever else that is changing maybe the brain chemistry or, a combination of all those things? What do you think that is part of, again, the psychedelic, that connection that is so common that people report, of that like universal connection that you're finding out or feeling?
I mean, yeah, there's so much to what you just said, like that you could unpack, but I think at the core of it is that, we have these amazing brains that, that has a ability to filter out, like we get so much data all day, right, that we can't just process it all. So a lot of it gets stored in our subconscious, and our subconscious is a great gatekeeper saying, hey, and that's where essentially our ego lives at times, or essentially the ego kind of gatekeeps for the subconscious. But what the psychedelic does is just kind of like says, hey, ego, why don't you step over here for a little bit, hang out, give us a break, stop judging the world, stop trying to process and perceive the world and people all these different ways, or even yourself. Take a break over here and let us get to, let's go deep inside of who this person is. Let's go deep inside ourselves. Because once that happens, then yes, I would say that we do have the ability as an integrated person, body, soul, spirit, one person, to be able to fix ourselves. Mm-hmm. Even on the physical level, like our bodies are these incredible machines or avatars or meat wagons that can heal themselves physically if we give them a chance. But we the shit we eat, the water we drink, the shit we breathe in, it's just all taxing on our system. And so it makes it very hard for ourselves to heal ourselves, but it's the same thing with the brain, the emotions. And once we start kind of opening ourselves up to the possibility of that, and then you do start working with the plant medicine, you find that's kind of the case. Like, oh, okay, I have all that stuff inside me already. I don't need someone to go and I don't need to go and talk to a professional necessarily. Those things are beneficial. Having a community is very beneficial. Having somebody to talk things out with is very, very beneficial. But sometimes is that person I'm talking to, do they have some sort of motive? What's their bias? Are they going to try to reshape the way I'm, feeling or thinking because it doesn't line up with their beliefs? So you got to be careful with that too. So
Absolutely. I'm curious. So
No doubt.
yeah, I'm curious what. Well, I have tons of questions. I'm curious what everybody else is thinking in regards to this. I don't want to steal anything else, Morpheus or Theron. If you have a line of questions, I have quite a extensive line of questioning here.
I mean, for me, really, the first question that I would have is just kind of what you said that you kind of got into medical marijuana and then moved away from it because the community wasn't super approving at the time. So at what point in time did you kind of have that connection where it's like, this is the direction that's beneficial for me?
yeah, yeah, I didn't really get to work with cannabis that long before the ex-wife put the kibosh on that. But it was probably, maybe 4 years later after that I first started to research microdosing for veterans. And I was just like, man, this is fascinating. I actually had a buddy that we were in high school together, best friends, went to the Army, was over in Fallujah before I was, ended up losing his right leg. And he went on this crazy journey for 10 years after that, where he ended up, working with LSD and mushrooms a lot. And so he kind of got me into it, kind of broached the subject with me about 4 years ago. So, so what ended up happening was I was like, okay, well, I want to do this. And I didn't know this, or this is a lot of the professionals, or the experts say you should just gradually work your way up to it, right? Try some mushrooms first, and then maybe at some point, after working with them, go maybe work with ayahuasca or something. I just went 0 to 90. I just went and sat in an ayahuasca ceremony. I said, I don't know, let's just do it. It sounds great. Yeah.
What is ayahuasca?
Yeah, good question. So ayahuasca, I have a because it was my first psychedelic that I worked with, I have a deep passion and reverence for it. But it is an Amazonian brew that's been brewed by the indigenous people in the Amazon for multiple millenniums. But at its core, it is the ayahuasca vine, and they brew it with a leaf called chacruna leaf. So you'll like the science part of this, Hermes, I know. But
Absolutely.
If you just take ayahuasca vine, you just brew the vine and drink the brew from it, which is kind of like a kind of syrupy, sometimes it tastes kind of like blackstrap molasses, but if you were to take that in, nothing would happen. Even though the vine has all the DMT, the spirit molecule that, creates the experience, you won't feel anything. And the reason is because there's an enzyme in our stomach that breaks down that DMT before it gets received into the receptors in your stomach. So what the chacruna leaf does is it has what they call a monooxidase inhibitor that inhibits that enzyme from working in your stomach, kind of shuts it off. So then that DMT from the ayahuasca can be absorbed, and then poof, you go flying.
And so
It takes
the
about
reaction itself,
30,
is it
40
all
minutes.
DMT, or is there still like a psilocybin reaction as well?
So that's the DMT from the ayahuasca. Now psilocybin is different, but you don't have to have that. I'm trying to recall if it's naturally a part of the fungi, if it already has that inhibitor with it. But I think that's where the psilocybin and the psilocin begin to work together, because you'll find both of those compounds inside the fungi. So yeah, you wouldn't need to take any sort of other enzyme inhibitor.
And
I think
said
if I
you
built
did
it-
you said like an what was it, ayahuasca?
Mm.
You said like an ayahuasca, what was it, ceremony? What'd you say?
Yeah, it was a ceremony. Yeah, because it
Explain,
comes from the
please.
jungle. Yeah, so it comes from the jungle. So your work, it is something that the indigenous tribes have used for a long time. And so they're very ceremonial. They're very ritualistic, just like the Native Americans. There's always something tribal and ceremonial that surrounds it, because they look at it as essentially their spirit in the plants. And so
Did
they
you
want to honor
go there to do
the
this?
spirits that way. No. A lot of people are flocking to say like Peru and Brazil over the last couple of decades to go work with it. But so many have worked with it so much that they've brought it here. And now you can find ceremonies all across the country. And pretty much anywhere you'll be able to find a ceremony that you can go and sit in for, typically it's 2 days. Sometimes it's 3, sometimes it's longer. Yeah. So, but you do it at night. So you might start at like 6, 7 in the evening, and it'll go until like 3 or 4 in the morning. And then you rest up and do it again the next night.
Wow, that is
Yeah.
nuts. So would you say the ceremony, like, is that a very like crucial part to the experience? Like, does that help kind of put your mind in the right place it needs to be to make it as, beneficial as possible? As opposed to like if I were just to get a glass of it and chug it sitting in my office.
Yeah.
Do you think
Yeah,
that would
man,
put me in
these
like
are
a slightly different headspace?
such good questions. So yeah, so there's been a lot of discussion and thought on this lately. I personally love the structure of these ceremonies. They can be really structured, where every minute is, written out, and of course it never goes according to plan because everybody's working with the medicine. But like the music that's being used, and when they do this thing or they do that thing, or when they have, because you'll have multiple cups, like typically 1 to 3 cups each night. So like when is the second cup? When's the third cup? So it is structured, and I think there's a necessity for that. It's important. But it also helps with keeping you grounded or keeping you in a safe place, because it's deep. That it'll take you very, very deep. And it'll also send you flying as well. And so having people there to assist when things get challenging is very important. But there are some people that get access to it, and they just do it in their own private ceremony in their home. So
That reminds me a lot of like, you look at old stuff about the Vikings and like a lot of Nordic people, how they use mushrooms a lot in a lot of their like religious rituals and stuff. And I always wondered, like, it's fucking crazy. Like, how are they, loading up on handfuls of mushrooms and then like doing all this stuff? But like, that makes a lot of sense if it's, the structure of it keeps you grounded to a degree. You have your shaman, your head person. That's kind of like, when I say ye, you say ha, you know what I mean? And that.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's important. I think it's important.
I'd imagine they probably have like a lot of experience with that too. So, they can kind of tell how to steer the group in the right direction and make sure that things are, kind of like productive and not just, like we were talking about earlier, a bad trip.
So like trip sitters, basically.
Don't look at the scary
Yeah, trip
stuff.
sitter. Exactly. It's
important too when you do trip to have a trip sitter that could be tripping just as hard as you, but it's still like, hey man, like it's okay. It's like, don't worry about it.
because it's all about feeling alone. If you're feeling alone, that's where the fear sets in. It's I'm alone, and this is outside of my norm. Even if you're a veteran, psychedelic user, is that you could still come into contact with just something that seems really kind of scary, and when you're alone, it's kind of compounded. But if somebody's there, you're just taking the natural precautions. But it's interesting when they do it in the tribal setting down in South America. I mean, it's such a part of their normal life that like kids are doing it and pregnant women are doing it. It's normal. It's their medicine.
Friday night, we're all gonna go down to the hut.
Holy shit.
Yeah, but see, they don't see it that way. Like that's a Western thing. That's an American thing.
Jeff's got some vine,
Recreational. Yeah.
Well, I have something that I just thought of that wasn't part of any of the outline or anything, and something that actually Morpheus and I had talked about in previous. Morpheus, are we getting public about this or not? About our celebration or no?
Let's just say on one of our past travels.
Past travels from all right. So Swim told us in one of their past travels about they were basically talking about going further, or going basically further down the rabbit hole and confronting certain things, or
Do you look at the scary stuff or don't you?
Exactly. And when you were talking about that, specifically like having a trip sitter or not, I've obviously always heard that having a trip sitter is the safest route, and doing that even if you're a veteran and so on. My curiosity, though, specifically from our friend Swim here, when we're talking about going further down the rabbit hole, has often described benefits from doing things alone and actually confronting or otherwise delving into the darker aspects and then coming out of them, specifically like anxiety or fear in general. What is your take on that, Seth? Is that something that is maybe just specific, like an anecdotal evidence for that specific person, or do you think maybe it just varies widely person to person, as drugs similarly do? I don't know. How do you unpack any of that?
Yeah. No, I think it is up to the individual. You can only, the best thing we can do is just provide the education to say, hey, here's the facts of what could happen, what not, and then you get to make that choice. And that's what comes down to our inalienable rights to, or should be our inalienable rights to work with this medicine, right? It's like, hey, you're an adult, all right? Act like an adult. But for me personally, I like, with certain medicine like ayahuasca, I like to be in that community setting. But I also like to work with psilocybin and LSD and go really as deep as I can by myself. I do like doing it with I'll sit there with my buddy who was in the Army that I mentioned, and we'll just have the most incredible conversations, right, that we wouldn't normally have. But I do also like to work with it on my own. I wouldn't use those deep experiences to really address depression and anxiety. Maybe coming out of them, I might have gotten some answers from it that I can go, okay, here's the answers. Now I got to go do something about that. But I feel like addressing anxiety, depression, PTSD, things like that, I think that microdosing is a better practice for those kinds of things.
Yeah, and I was very curious about that specifically. I was some of the research I was doing over this last week was the effective dose basically of psychedelics, and how strangely, which maybe, I don't know, maybe you can explain, and I'm no expert on any of it. Again, I'm just researching, just reading, and it's I have a couple theories on, or hypothesis as to why, but what is this correlation with psychedelics being more effective at lower doses like microdosing versus at the higher doses of actual tripping? Meaning like a lot specifically with like addiction, anxiety, and depression symptoms, where it's I was reading anywhere between 1/20th, 1/10th, and even 1/4 of a dose, as we touched on in the pre-show. Why is that? Why do you think that is proving more effective?
Hey, real quick to cut off, Hermes, I'm gonna have to be dipping out.
That's fine, dude.
You send me the link so I can continue listening, because this has
Absolutely.
been a really good conversation.
Absolutely.
And I really hate to have to go, but
No, you're good.
Did you have any other questions, Morpheus? You're asking some great ones. I just want to make sure I address them.
so
properly.
many. But next time.
It's all right, buddy.
You got to text Hermes while you're gone.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's
ask him
I
this
was
one.
actually kind of thinking about doing that.
Just stay in the chat, bro. You and Mike can stay in the chat, and anybody else who has any questions, please pull them up in the chat. We're going to be here for as long as Seth will give us his time, all right? We're just going to be doing this because this is, again, like we said, hugely important work, hugely passionate about.
100%.
Yeah, as
for real.
we've talked about on the show before, yeah, we're sick of you losing friends. Like we're not doing this. All right, so let's talk about it. Let's figure this out. So
I love it.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah, Morpheus.
guys, again, real sorry to have to leave, but
You're
Seth,
good, bro.
this has been awesome. Let's
Yeah, man.
definitely
Pleasure.
do this again soon. And
Absolutely.
I will be listening, so I'll message y'all in the group.
All right, man. I'll see you later.
Sounds good.
Later, Morpheus.
Sounds good.
Later.
Might have to get you guys set up to do a ceremony at some point and get back on here and do a podcast about it.
Oh fuck! Well, our friends swim, of course. For Morpheus and I, our friends swim, not us, of course.
Yeah, and for any of our listeners who keep wondering who in the hell Swim is, I think everybody has a friend like Swim, someone who isn't me.
Yes. For those, yeah. Thank you, Theron. I'm sorry. I always just assume.
That's awesome. Yeah, so let's see if I can answer your question then, Hermes. I feel like if I could answer it the best way, it's the major trip, or like the deep trips, if you were to call it like a macro dose, if you're working with psilocybin, something maybe above 5 grams, 6 grams, up to 10 grams, you're taking it because you want to go in deep. You want to do that kind of mystical work. I want to do that stuff. I want to connect with my spirit or the higher self or something cosmic. I want some answers. I want to kind of relate to my creator on some level. I think that's really good. I think that's necessary. Now, the studies that they're doing at Johns Hopkins for the sake of depression, anxiety, PTSD, addiction, things like that, they're working with doses between 3 and 5, I would say. 5 that's kind of the heroic dose is what they call it. And they're working with that amount because one, it does give you a trip. It's just not a really, really intense one, but most of the folks coming out of those will attest that and months and months afterwards is that they're different. Something has changed. They're not suffering from that thing anymore. That doesn't mean that everybody's immediately cured. It's not a cure all. Some people might have to do it again. But some people, I think they said 80% of folks coming out of those studies are just like, I'm different. I'm completely, that was a pivotal time in my life, up there with the birth of their child or something along those lines.
Jesus. And
then with the microdosing, you're working with, like you said, like a tenth up to a quarter of a gram. Psilocybin, of course, different strands, different species of psilocybin has different potencies. So there's always got to be careful of that. But what you're getting out of that microdose is feelings of, feeling well, not feeling depressed, not feeling anxious. There's a lot more going on in the brain, a lot more activity going on in the brain than you do just your normal day. So there's new neurons being created. The synapses are firing at a much more efficient rate. So you're going to have a little bit of energy, but you're not going to have those bogging down feelings all the time. But what's great is that not only are you feeling better, but those neural pathways are being created, which help to give you it gives your brain a new path to go down instead of always defaulting to the depressive state. Mm-hmm. Those things that cause depression, those things that cause anxiety, there's something not right in our brain. There's a way that we're defaulting to. And so if we can build new neural pathways in our brain that are more beneficial, and we can handle life differently and see life differently, have a different outlook on life, then those depressive feelings begin to kind of just go away.
Interesting.
So
very much a ground up approach.
Yeah. Yeah. I was gonna ask, do you really feel or see psychedelics as a tool or one of a set of tools in that respect, that they're unlocking or allowing that ability somehow?
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I can't speak very well on the science of it there's so much great data out there.
I want woo woo. If I want,
I see.
Yeah, I'll give the science. But I'm curious, through your experience, what do you take away from it, or what could you tell others you have taken from it in that respect of this accessibility or this freeing up of that or unlocking of that? I'm very curious as to that portion.
And you're talking about working with more and having a deeper experience as opposed to the microdosing part?
Both, and just basically the effect of I mean, because I guess it depends on, I guess it depends on what, like you said, what you're looking for and what you're trying to get out of it, as to what you will get out of it. Similar to, what is that saying? Like the mindset you go into a psychedelic with is what you're basically going to get out of it, or have the likelihood of getting out of it. But I was
Yeah.
curious as to the more spiritual side of things, as to why this exists, or why we have this ability,
Yeah.
because I guess where this stems from is a swim experience. Is my friends swim. They're very, they described their very first LSD experience as almost religious, and being someone who's not a religious person by any means, they found it pretty surprising, to say the least, where it was, especially specifically having life experiences in the way that they did, in saying that, even like a near-death experience, and then comparing that near-death experience with an LSD trip, they had this obvious, like, conflicting or paradoxical realization, where it's like, on one side of the coin, it's lights out, there's a light switch, TV turned off, and that was very disheartening in a lot of ways and caused a lot of issues. And then having the opposite side of the coin, where it was like, whoa, no, that's not, there can't be, there's definitely something else here. This is proof of something else here. And then, of course, coming to terms with somewhere in the middle, as to like, well, what means what was the brain saying this? What was the brain saying that? What is basically, like I said, finding somewhere in the middle. It's always fascinated me as to the other aspect of things, specifically the spiritual side of things.
Yeah. It's kind of interesting. Some of the testimonials you'll hear from people who, a lot of folks that are proclaimed atheists that go and have never worked with it before. And then they do. And not that they come out and they're like, oh, I'm religious now, or, oh, I'm not an atheist anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But what they do is they explain it as like, hey, I don't know, or I don't think the same way I thought before. I don't know exactly what happened, but I felt like I was bathed in God's love.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. And that was just their only terminology. That was only language for it. Not that they stopped, proclaiming to be an atheist, but they just knew that there was something else on the other side of that. And so I think that that's kind of, you've got civilizations for, thousands and thousands of years that have worked on it with it only for the religious aspect of it, only for the spiritual aspect of it. There's a great book that just came out recently called The Immortality Key. Oh gosh, Brian. Oh, I'm going to butcher his last name, so I'm not going to do it. But I'll try to find it here in a sec. But he did an exhaustive study over the course of like 10 or 12 years about this mystery religion, the religion with no name, that came out of like Eleusis, and in Greece, and how they worked with this soma medicine, or the Kikion medicine, and but it was all geared around some sort of religious ceremony, right? And so it was all about them connecting with spirit guides, or the creator, or multiple. Yeah, exactly, Ethereum. So I don't know what it is, like near-death experience. Just to get back to that one. Near death, when we are at the verge of near death, like we're about to die, there is this interesting thing that happens in our brain, in our pineal gland, where it knows, like if somebody's drowning, right before they actually drown, the pineal gland releases DMT, that chemical, that dimethyltryptamine released, so that it helps us be okay with this transition into death. And so when they have these near-death experiences, they're essentially having a psychedelic trip with DMT. And what they come in contact with, I don't, it's probably different for everybody, but they always seem to come back with some sort of revelation or a story of some loving entity that cared for them. So that's more kind of on the woo side, but I think it's something we all need. I've always said it this way: we're spirit beings having a human experience. Whatever that means exactly for each person, I don't know. But I resonate with it.
Absolutely.
Well, and just on the topic of that near-death experience, you know, you have a lot of people who are like, oh, you know, they told me it wasn't my time yet. You know, that's a repeated story that you hear from all kinds of unrelated people that I, like, from my experiences with DMT, perfectly kind of fit into the people you're talking to.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. And so I don't know. Everybody's got a different story, but
Getting further into the woo-woo, I mean, we start a little scientific, and any listener knows we bounce back and forth. I am, again, super fascinated about the spiritual side of things because I like puzzles. I like open-ended questions. I like theorizing about, you know, different things and figuring out, you know, what it means to each person. You know, if we're all living a subjective experience to begin with, you know, what's the difference, or what's the harm in going a little further? So the specifically when it comes to going back to the near death again, not to dwell too much on it, but when that DMT release, I've heard and read quite a bit about, you know, different theory. And again, there's no clear answer. Nobody really knows yet, or maybe ever. But there's a bunch of theories, and one that I particularly enjoy is that, like you were saying, it basically gives you that trip leading up to death, and maybe as like again, having the biological background, having that biological response of basically gosh, think a buddy of mine, or I want to say buddies of mine, over on another podcast that I listen to frequently, Alien Theorists Theorize, and they actually just did a case file on near-death experiences, and one of them, Braden, who actually was a guest previously, shout out to Braden, was describing
Such a good episode.
Great episode. Was describing it as an antelope, basically in the jaws of like a jaguar or tiger, right? If you look at a lot of prey animals when they're in that specific, you know, situation, they're in the clench, they're in the jaws of death. That's it. They're done. Their throat's in there. They know. They seem, and a lot of times you look at like discovery videos and things, they seem passive. Like they seem, well, I'm fucked. Like I'm not getting out of this one. And going into the DMT, you know, rabbit hole, I read that there is a theory that DMT is released almost as like a cell protectant, in terms of a cell death protectant. So it either extends the life or potential likelihood of surviving should you get away from a certain, you know, situation that is a near death. Like when your body is like, nope, we're fucking dying here. DMT is like, well, just in case, we're going to save as many cells as we can. We're going to shut these things off. And we're going to do the normal biology and go through, you know, as the body has a response to inevitable death. We're going to go through these normal progressions and these steps, but just in case, you know, we're going to hopefully save as much as we can. And I thought that was crazy interesting, and it sort of clicked in a lot of ways. Like he was saying with the antelope, you know, maybe they're sort of tripping out right there. They're like, you know, their throats in the jaws of a lion, and similar to if you have a severe enough injury, your body basically has its own natural anesthetic that it commonly, you know, kicks in. I'm curious if that's the same, or we have a similar sense when it comes to death, and maybe that's where a lot of these near-death experiences, or a lot of these hallucinogenic, maybe that we're tapping into experiences, is that we're basically like cracking or tapping into that function, that biological function of death. You know, long story short, is where our body's like, well, this is the end. This is what's going to happen. Might as well make it nice and comfortable as, you know, on the way out, basically. And I'm curious.
Yeah.
I'm curious.
I've never heard that before. That's really interesting. That part of the cells being bathed in it. That's, I mean, that would make sense because, you know, every organic material has DMT in it. You know, some just have it more than others. We carry a lot of DMT in our lungs. So people that do like holotropic breath work, they can actually have psychedelic experiences just because they draw on the DMT from their lungs.
Wait,
so,
you're saying if I breathe right, I can have a DMT trip?
You ever heard of like Wim Hof?
I have the Wim Hof method. I say it halfway sarcastically because I had a yoga instructor when I was in college who used to say that all the time. Like, all right, guys, we're going to do the breath work. And then like halfway towards the end of the breath work, she's like, "You feeling it yet? You getting that high? You getting that head shake?" Like every time.
Things
Every
tingling.
time. Yeah.
Yeah.
every time.
Your lips tingling, and
And of
yeah,
course,
it's
like,
there's.
yeah.
You're like, I think I'm just lightheaded from holding my breath. I know.
Well, I wasn't
Well,
gonna
I
say
guess-
that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know how he does it. It's like that, like getting in as much oxygen into your system as you can. Like you're inflating your whole system with the oxygen, and then you're forcing it into the cells. Like you're holding it and you're forcing it into the cells. You know, there's something to that on a scientific or biological level. But I guess what also is happening is, you know, you're accessing certain DMT storages in your lungs, and that's why some people, they will, if they do it. I mean, and it's a lot of work, man. Like I'd rather just take something, you know, just give me some shrooms. You know, I don't want to do all that work. Yeah, right. Exactly. So it does. It takes a lot of work, but it does have other added benefits. And not to go off into that tangent, but it does have other added benefits to like circulatory system and you know, fighting off you know, brown adipose fat, and you know, just a very, very healthy kind of thing to do anyway. But on the psychedelic side, yeah, you can actually tap into that. So, you know, it's kind of funny. I talk to, because I come out of a religious background. Like I grew up in the church. It was only about 4 or 5 years ago that I started to like really kind of deconstruct my faith. And
right around psychedelic time frame.
Yeah.
Huh?
Well,
coincidentally.
right. Well, that was the thing, is like it started, and it eventually led me into one thing, which led me into another, which helped me find kind of open myself up to you know, just other things, and psychedelics happen to be one of them. But now I kind of like have these discussions with friends that have a church background as well, and we talk about like the burning bush, you know, in the Old Testament. What was really going on there? You know, most likely evidence shows that there's a good chance it was an acacia tree bush, whatever, and those have a shit ton of DMT in them. And so, you know, it's on fire, it's burning, and you know, Moses is getting
it
tripping
all
out.
in, yeah.
Yeah, there's
yeah,
some
who
God in
knows?
there. I'm getting a little present. Nope, that's definitely God.
Yeah.
Yep, I'm getting some God.
You know, and he comes up with the great, you know, he comes up with 10 commandments that's going to help this, you know, this community. Like, why not? That's shit. Steve Jobs, you know, he gave us the technology we needed today through LSD uses, you know. So why not Moses coming up with the 10 commandments? I don't know. I always just like to play devil's advocate with folks, especially to find out like where they lie with their their dogma. But yeah.
Well,
No, I think, wasn't it Ralphie May who said, I think Moses was burning some bush.
right. Oh yeah. And Jesus was selling weed, right? He's like, come on, let's do the math here. Sandals, hippie beard, long hair, 12 disciples. Come on, guys, it all adds
Right.
up.
He's wearing the poncho, I'm sure of it.
Yeah.
He's like, here. I got the cure for your blindness. Come on over here, Peter. But
there's some interesting speculation around that, like, you know, the lost years of Jesus. Where was he? You know, he was down in Egypt,
Totally.
and they're really big on psychedelic use, you know, back then. And so, like, what was he discovering back then? You know, when these lost years in the Bible, where did Jesus go? And then he comes back, and he's this heightened, enlightened master, you know, and he's healing people, and you know, all that kind of stuff. Like, it's great speculation. I love it.
Yeah.
But when you start saying, you know, to devout Christians, you get a different, you know, their face starts to contort a little bit. But you know, the original Christian faith was a Gnostic kind of Eastern kind of philosophy, you know, and they were known to work with plant medicine. They were known to work with fungi and other things, and like ergot, which is the fungus that grows on barley and wheat, which was synthesized into LSD.
Yeah.
You know, and so.
Well, I was gonna ask, what you're you know, if we have this long history and we have such a connection, even at the, you know, basic or spiritual level, whatever level anybody, you know, however you want to define it, where and why did we lose it, and why is it that we are in the situation we're in now, or, you know, we ignore these medicines, we ignore these at least potential medicines or potential, you know, first steps in the right direction, you know, or maybe wrong step, I don't know, but let's fucking find out where did all this and why Do you know or have any ideas as to why or where this all started?
Just a pharmaceutical man.
Yeah, that's right. Man, we could talk about that for a while, huh? But I mean, you and I kind of hinted at something earlier about like, there's a reason why we respond to this molecule. These different molecules. There's a reason why these molecules are very similar in their makeup as the serotonin, and why our serotonin receptors fit really well with this DMT molecule. Like, it was almost like we were built to work with it. Same with cannabinoids and cannabis. We are meant to work with this plant medicine.
Exactly. Like, I've always asked that when people are like, oh, you shouldn't be, using cannabis in one form or another. And then why does everyone have an endocannabinoid system?
Exactly.
Like,
Yep.
We have the receptors for it. We naturally produce it in our body. If you've never smoked a day in your life, it's just not the exact same molecule, but it works in your body the same way. And that's why we like it so much.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so logically, you have to look at that and go, you have to give some sort of valid or a legitimacy to that. Like, even if we don't know the answers necessarily, like, we have to say there's something there. Like, don't just close yourself off.
And especially with Hermes and the scientific, like, we're super big into like evolution, and the dominant traits will survive and carry on. Like, that system wouldn't have generated that way if there wasn't a reason for it. Like,
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Especially one I was just to say that works so well and so profoundly in the way that it does. You can have things like anti-inflammatory side effects. You can have anti-anxiety. You can have, and on the opposite side of it, super anxiety side effects and super profound, abstract thinking, lethargy of time and space. You can have all of these things that are side effects of this system. And it's like, no, that's just, that's pretty random. That just happens, fuck you.
Yeah.
Like, what?
Right.
I have
drink
a hard
some
time.
water, try again next time.
Yeah, I have a very hard time, like, when people say things like that to me. It's like, I remember one specific conversation where they were like, well, what do you honestly get out of psychedelic, like out of a psychedelic experience? Like, what do you really get for your life? I'm like, well, I could name 10 things right now for you, but I don't think, knowing you who has never tried psychedelics, I don't know how you're going to respond to it, And it's
right. It's the kind of thing you could talk for an hour, but it's impossible to explain at the same time.
Yeah,
you just kind of got to do it.
Well,
yeah.
And that leads me to this other aspect that I had talked to there was another email actually specifically of bringing this point out. Is it Romeo? I think it's Romeo from France, one of our latest patrons, was asking about is that not a side effect of or a bias rather of the user rather? Everybody who tries drugs loves drugs, of course. So you telling me, someone who doesn't do psychedelics or drugs or otherwise, you telling me, well, it's those things you got to try. It's like, yeah, every addict says that. Every addict says, well, don't knock it till you try it. And it's like, well, every addictive substance, is addictive after you try it. So if it's like the other side of the coin, playing devil's advocate, of course. I don't know. Do you guys have anything to say to those? Because I have my response, but it's, again, probably not the best response.
I mean, for my response, I'll just go shout out to all of our Patreon members. It's cheap and monthly. We've got content that we give to them, and they get episodes early. Right now, we're live streaming to everyone, but typically only our Patreon members get the live streams. So if you want to get the hot dope quick and early, subscribe to our Patreon.
Oh, yeah, see, that's why Theron's in charge of marketing.
There you go. That's great. Yeah, when I started this experience, like I'll give you a little bit of context. Like, a few months after my first experience, I wanted to start microdosing, and I wanted microdosing fungi, and I'm going to start my own grow. It's a very small one. And,
whoa there, don't tell anybody where you live there now, Seth.
Well, yeah, I don't have it right now. I don't have it anymore, but this is what kind of led to the demise of my marriage. We weren't doing well anyway, but it was just like, it was kind of that camel, or the hair on the camel's back, or the straw on the camel's back. But she just wasn't, she just wasn't open to it yet, and she felt like I was going down some crazy, road or something.
You're gonna start injecting these silicines here pretty soon. These psilocybes.
Yes,
straight to the blood veins here, and you're
That's
gonna
right.
have
Inject it into my penis or it doesn't work.
But it was like, how do I have conversations with people, like other family members? My dad, him and I, he's a both my parents come from a law enforcement background, and my mom's very open, but my dad is very black and white. And so having this conversation with him, who has never done anything, it's just it doesn't happen, right? And so there's people that they have a certain judgment or a certain position on these, but they don't know why. They've never actually thought about it. They're just like, well, the government says they're bad, so they must be bad. Even though I don't trust the government over here with other certain things, I trust them with their stance on narcotics, right? But
Sure.
they don't know how to defend their position other than, well, it's illegal.
That's just
right.
what I
And
was
so they
told.
can't have an educated. Yeah, exactly. So, and that's how I grew up. That's how I was programmed growing up. So I don't really, they're not really ready to have an educated conversation about psychedelics. They're just gonna say it's bad, or I heard back in the 60s somebody took LSD and jumped out a window and killed themselves. The stigmas are just so ugly, and that's kind of where we got to today, where we're just now seeing the renaissance of it. But it could have happened back in the 70s. Like, they were doing so much incredible research, and it was just shut down, right? It was, and it was all political. It was all political. It was Nixon's political agenda for a couple of reasons. One, that's it, right? It was to go after the Black Panthers, to have a legitimate reason to arrest them and to break them up. It also had to do with the fact that he didn't want all these, make love, not war, hippies running around, not enlisting, right? To go fight wars. Yeah. So so we're going to make a villain out of this thing. We're going to criminalize it. And it just put a lot of stops on the research at that time that was already happening for a few decades before that. But, they continued to do research underground, thank God. And then they eventually, in the late 90s, early 2000s, they were able to start getting funding or grants, or just allowed to continue research and
access. Yeah.
Yeah. And access and stuff. So, and that's what's begun to change people's mindsets on it and open themselves up to the fact that, hey, maybe there's something here.
Yeah. And I mean, there's two things that I really want to hit on. The first one is, like you said, thank God. I mean, I've lost some friends to suicide, and thinking or wondering, just wondering if, something other than, an opiate or an antidepressant could have helped them. Obviously is one of those.
Well, I mean, anything, when you lose a friend in that situation, you just wonder, is there anything I could have done?
Exactly. Well, yeah. And, so knowing that exists is one of, those bitter, not even bittersweet, just bitter motivations that again, why we continue talking about this, and why a lot of the podcasts, why we started, we were having these conversations prior, we just weren't recording it. Why we still talk about this is because it is still happening. And 18 down from 22. Thank God that we have 4 less every day.
Yeah.
But it's still one of those sobering facts. But on the flip side of it, or the secondary question, is like, what is it? I don't know, what dangers or what should we be also cautious of or aware of or be thinking of? Because I've always said that there, with anything, there's users and there's abusers, and I don't think it's crazy to assume that just because water can hydrate you and keep you alive and is good for you, that overdoing it is not also troublesome. So
yeah, can totally kill you. Turns out,
can totally kill you. So on the on the flip side of the coin, for this discussion of psychedelics. What is it? What is it that we should also be aware of or educate, ourselves on in terms of the dangers of use, or are there dangers of use? Again, when we discussed in the very beginning, during my reading and research on the topic, there are significantly, and I want to say that right, first and foremost, there's significantly fewer negative side effects when it comes to, thus far, the alternative therapies and medicine compared to what is currently legal, even that I'm drinking right now when it comes to alcohol. But again, having said that and having a disclaimer, as we said, we should have the choice to choose. If we have the choice to choose, what should we know about it?
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm glad you brought up alcohol, because, I don't have anything against alcohol either. But if you look at the statistics, like how many people die from alcohol? Well, in large doses, which is how we typically take it, is, in large doses, people that have died from, cirrhosis of the liver, or go out drinking and driving and kill somebody, the deaths surrounding or as a result of alcohol consumption are vast, and yet it's still okay. Mm-hmm. It's still legal and tolerated,
socially accepted.
Exactly. Socially accepted, exactly. Or even cigarettes, right? So how many? I think it's like 500,000 people a year die from cigarette, cigarette use, and yet it's one of those things that's okay. But these things that don't actually kill anybody are outlawed, right? So, and I won't give it, I'll be done evangelizing that part, but the things to be aware of are very similar to things we should be aware of when we're, using alcohol. Like, don't drink and drive, don't consume more than you're prepared or able to consume, like before you get to a point where you're just, either really fucked up or a complete asshole, like, know how much is your limit. But when it comes to working with psychedelics, it goes even a little bit further than that. And it's just about self-care. I tell people when I work with my clients, I say the number one thing that the reason we work with psychedelics is to fall in love with ourselves more, because so much of our issues come out of this self-hatred place.
That's so
I hate myself for this. I hate myself for that. Whether we know it or not, it's very subconscious, and it might stem from the way we were raised and the programming we got when we were raised. How well were we taken care of? What did that communicate to me growing up? Am I worthless? So we develop these self-hatred issues, and the psychedelics bring us to a place where we fall more and more in love with ourselves, because what does that do for the collective? I can love other people so much more. I can love this planet so much more. And so that's the whole purpose behind it. But it is important that, it's a process. It's a journey. I might start working with psychedelics and I've got some major trauma that I need to move through, and it's going to be challenging maybe. And that trauma is coming up because we save that trauma even on the cellular level, right? So we got trauma saved all over our bodies in different ways inside the cells. And I want to heal that. I want to purge that so that I can be a better person. But that might be like going through hell. Sometimes they call it the dark night of the soul. It's almost like a second death, or to be reborn, because it can be really dark and really challenging. And so it's not for everybody. It should be for the folks that are like, hey, something needs to fucking change. I'm done living this way, and I don't want to go and medicate it, because I just don't want to be medicated all the time. I want to fight. I want to go after this thing. And so I'm going to work with this medicine, and it's going to be challenging as hell, but I'm going to do it smart. I'm going to work with somebody.
Just detoxing that shit out of your system.
Yeah. You have to. Like, I don't know if you guys ever heard the book, The Body Keeps the Score, but it gets really deep into the biology of trauma and like how we do keep it stored in our body. We got to get that shit out. Otherwise, we're just going to keep living the same trauma over and over and over again. And so I feel like the plant medicine really helps with that. But we got to be smart about it. Otherwise, I don't have a problem with recreational use if you're smart. Sure. You want to take a little bit and go take in some real good music somewhere. That can be therapeutic. Take some and go for a hike in the mountains.
A good Dead concert.
Yeah, right. It can be very therapeutic. I don't have a problem with that. But you just have like kids youth that are in a a 30 or 40-year-old body that still think like a child, that are taking these things and acting a fool. I could expect it from teenage kids. They want to explore. We were all there, but we were thinking like kids back then. It's time to grow up and be responsible. So
yeah.
Well, and I've
setting,
made this point a
stuff
lot.
like that.
I think that that's like a huge part of why that happens is because of prohibition. Is because people their entire lives were told that, oh, this is bad, it's gonna kill you, it's gonna wreck your life, it's gonna ruin everything, and then somebody convinces them to try it once, and it was great. Like, it didn't do any of the things that anyone said, and in fact, it did a bunch of stuff that they were really on board for. And so, like, in their mentality, they're approaching it like I did when I was a teenager, because they're having that same first experience that I did when I was 15 or 16, but, they're 30.
Yeah.
And so I can give them a little bit of leeway because I absolutely understand. But I think more than anything, that just speaks to the fact that society needs to change, because if people weren't raised so close-minded in the first place, they wouldn't go hog wild once they realize that these things aren't the way they've been told. And I've had a couple friends who have had it go just really bad for them because, they smoke weed with me and they find out, oh, well, cannabis isn't that bad. I was told that this is going to be terrible and it was going to ruin everything. And like, now they're hooked on heroin because they're like, well, I just assumed everyone was lying about all drugs.
Yeah. And that's a different issue. That's a like, I've been told this one thing and now it's not true. So I'm just going to swing the pendulum.
Must be true.
Yep. I'm going to swing the pendulum. And that in and of itself is indicative of lack of maturity. Right. Mm-hmm. And again, like I'll make a little caveat too. Like, I don't have a problem. I don't have a problem with heroin. I don't have a problem with cocaine. Those things are derivatives of plant medicine. But the problem is there's been zero adequate reform.
People are fucking irresponsible.
But in this country, there's been zero good reform. You look at Portugal, they are kicking ass. They are 100%. They've got the most incredible reform program where, they've got clinics set up, people can come in and use, but they're using clean product. They're not overdoing it. They're educated. They're highly educated on the use of it. And there's no problem with it. If anybody's listening, a good person to look up is Dr. Carl Hart. Joe Rogan just did a great podcast with him. He is a proponent talking about these things, and it's all about responsibility and education. And so, anyway,
I think more.
Yeah. As you were talking and as you were saying, look, like, I understand this, and as Theron was saying, I give leeway with that. Every single thing was echoing the same thing, which is, responsibility. Like, you take care of yourself, you take care of your education, you educate yourself, you take care of yourself in the end of the day, at the end of the day, and yourself's going to take care of you. If you go into it uneducated, unprepared, haphazardly, unmaturely, and you just are like, well, balls to the wall. I mean, sometimes it's not going to end up the best. And same thing if you don't know yourself to begin with, because you grew up in a structured and a closed off environment, or a very black and white environment, or whatever, and you don't have all the information, then like you're saying there, and you can't necessarily fault yourself, but you also can't. To me, you can't trust yourself either.
Absolutely. You don't know what you don't know.
Yeah, and that's unfortunate. A big thing that I come back to, and like you're talking about Carl Hart, loved that interview, loved all the interviews he's done, and I love a lot of his work. Is that education and that destigmatization of life, basically. Of it doesn't matter what substance, chemical, whatever it is that you're talking about. Everything has an A, B, and C response. And then if we could just eliminate the S response of societal responses and societal, baggage that we add on to all of these other of just life in itself, at least from his testimony and my experience, I don't know about you guys, but in my personal experience, that's a big load to take off, is societal baggage. When you're not you're not confining yourself to these lenses of other people's lenses, you know? Do things for yourself. I advocate trying things for yourself. I don't care what it is, as long as you're doing it responsibly, as long as you're doing it educatedly, or, educated prior to doing it. When Theron was saying, it's like, yeah, somebody smoked with me and then they were like, well, everybody's a liar, so I guess I'm going to try heroin and meth. I understand that response because I had a similar response when I first delved outside, because I had alcohol problems and substance problems prior, and because those were the accepted things, so I was like, well, everybody does those, and I'll just I have a history of
they're
family
accessible.
alcoholism.
Nobody thinks it's weird.
Yeah, exactly. So I was like, well, if I can only do these things, then I'm gonna do these things, and those end up becoming an issue for a million other reasons. So when I had the experience, or excuse me, Swim had the experience. Sorry, I keep saying that. I keep speaking on behalf of Swim. It's a bad habit. I gotta break.
I mean, this is probably past the statute of limitations.
But at the end of the day, when you have those experiences, and then all of a sudden, yeah, you have that light bulb that goes off. It's like, whoa, I didn't die. It's not gonna make me tear my eyes out of my head. Like, well, what else is not going to make me tear my eyes out of my head? And for me personally, just my own personality was like, well, let me explore, let me read up, let me educate myself. And so I did, before I tried anything else, and obviously not everybody has that, approach, and, to each his own. Coming back to it, it's like, if we have the right to choose, or we have the choice to choose, then, I fully support that. But fuck, man, it's one of those things that every time we talk about it, it's like, how the fuck? Why are we here? How are we going to get out of it? More than anything,
I think long-time listeners of the show know that one of my personal mottos is that I try everything twice, because you never know. Maybe you liked it the first time, but you were too freaked out by it. So you got to give it at least one more go. And then if you hate it after 2 times, it's probably not for you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's a good point. Like I've worked with cannabis in the past, but for whatever reason, ever since I just don't work well with it. I have nothing against it. I just don't work really well with it. I would choose working with something else over cannabis every time, but that's not the case for everybody. Like, some people work really well with cannabis, and I'm like, dude, that's freaking awesome. Yeah. No, I just think it's great that you're exercising your right. And again, I keep coming back to it, even if it's not a reality legislatively, but it is our inalienable right to be able to work with this. And I'll preach that. Exactly. So, but I think that coming back to just the society part of it is that, I just want to go back and say, like, I don't fault anybody for their response. We're talking about the response, the way that, hey, I went from cannabis to heroin, or, even people that, struggle with alcohol addiction and all the addictions, really. Like, I don't fault anybody for that. Like, I don't blame you for responding in that way, because we are raised to be victims and in this society, and or we're lied to, or we're just told something that maybe they thought was true, but it's not. And at some point in our life, we have to take the reins and say, okay, I can't keep blaming anybody anymore. I can't blame the government. I can't blame my parents. I can't blame my ex-girlfriend. Like, I have to take ownership of my world and my life and stop being a victim. And when you start doing that, then you start approaching these kinds of things with more maturity. But again, I don't fault anybody for that. That's just where they're at. And every time I talk to somebody, I want to say, hey, let's talk about getting you in the right headspace, so that you can approach these things from a more mature place. So we just need more grown-ups, to evolve, to start adulting, at some point, and stop blaming everybody else for their choices or their issues, But I say that because I've been there.
It's not one thing, it's always a pile or a compounding levels of things that leads to that position, but it is that one conscious thought and decision of, I have to get above this, I have to move myself in the right direction, and it's however you got to that place probably wasn't even up to you. You're just a victim of circumstance, but you said, it's up to you to decide to stop being a victim. and to take charge and actually, move forward with your life and not just kind of stay stuck in the undertow.
Yeah. And I was that, I made so many bad decisions growing up. I was that kid that couldn't grow up until he was like 35, making just shitty decisions. But
And I'm super down for people, like you said, to have access to whatever tools helps them get to that point. Whether it's psilocybin or cannabis, like real talk. If doing a bump of coke helps you out every once in a while, then good on you, man. Like I personally, politically am a libertarian, so I don't care what you do as long as it doesn't affect me. Like you said, you can do whatever you want at home as long as you're not getting in your car and driving around and running over something that I care about. If you're being safe and you're making responsible decisions in your own home, then more power to you.
Yeah. And that's the way it should be. But it comes down to political power and money and, agendas and all that crap. Yeah. But
that's what I come back to is like, how do we solve it? How do we solve those things? And
we don't have solutions on the Scuttlebutt. What are you talking about?
No, we don't. We never do. We try sometimes, I guess. I don't know. But when it all comes down to it, just to hammer it home, just to beat the dead horse to death is like you're saying, like it does. If it's a bump of coke that that wakes you up and gets you to work, and it helps you not be a dick, because that's what it comes down to, right? It's not being a dick to anybody else. Like we're all trying to be decent people. We're all trying to make decent people. And have a society that's of decent people, not dicks to each other. So yeah, whatever it fucking is that does that for you, that doesn't like Theron said, that doesn't infringe on me or anybody else's ability to do that. Yeah, I'm all fucking for it. So yeah, again, not losing friends, whatever prevents me from losing any more friends and getting to talk like this with friends, then sign everybody up. I don't care what it is. Okay.
Yeah, Carl talks about like, does he? I think he vapes, or no, he sniffs heroin just a little bit, just to like unwind at the end of the day, be more empathetic and compassionate, towards his kids or whatnot. And that's something that is not like that is not. And that's only new. Or how do I put this? The laws, the prohibition on it is new in the grand scheme of things. Like that's been normal for thousands of years, people working with that in that way. And so we're just in a weird place the last couple hundred years where we don't understand what we're doing, we don't understand what we're working with. All we understand is power and capitalism and and how to control stuff. But I would love to see the reform that's happening in Portugal happening here, where people it can be somewhat regulated to where people's drugs can be tested. They can get good stuff. It gets rid of these assholes that are just creating it in their house and cutting it with shit and giving it dirt, putting dirt in people's veins,
their fucking garages, like
that. Like those are that's where the reform needs to happen. Videos
of people making meth in Gatorade bottles and shit, like.
Yeah,
exactly.
No, I'm sorry. I would really prefer a lab certified technician make my meth.
Right. So regulate that stuff. Don't outlaw it. Just regulate it, or outlaw that stuff, but don't outlaw the medicine itself.
The substance. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's I think that we can all agree that harm reduction works just 100 times better than prohibition. And there are tons and tons of research that would back that up at this point. And so anyone that still is pushing prohibition is clearly doing it for their own agenda at this point, because it's not logical. It's not the right way forward. And so there's no way in my mind that a sane person could argue that they think this works and it's right.
Oh my God. Theron.
I think it might be Puritan driven. We are a Puritan society. And so a lot of constituents would get on board with this, and they're the ones that get you elected. So
well, and like I alluded to earlier with pharmaceuticals, there's a lot of money in not doing it that way too. Is that, if people find a way to self-medicate that could be arguably healthy, but more importantly, it doesn't create a cycle where, well, you took this pill for a while and then it gave you this side effect. So we gave you a different pill and then that one didn't work for you. So now we try this one, and you're just basically on a never ending cycle of shit until you die or finally get tired of it and,
try
move on
shrooms.
to enlightenment.
There you go.
Well,
and that's why the VA is probably they're creating that budget to to work with
gosh.
MDMA, and I'm hoping maybe because enough people raised their voices, enough veterans have raised their voices and saying, hey, the shit that you're giving us in these clinics suck. People are dying. It's not helping anybody. And so with all the data behind MDMA assisted therapy, I think finally there's some reform happening where they're like, okay, let's raise up some therapists that can, administer this stuff.
Well,
I just really hope that they're going to be open-ended about it and really do the studies justice. Because I've seen a lot of studies like that where the people who are funding them they have a preconceived answer in mind. And if the study doesn't bear that out at all, they just say it was inconclusive and move on. And like, I hate that so much. When you actually look at the published paperwork of the study and it's like, no, it helped people. It was a great improvement. It was awesome. But the whole point of your study was to prove it was bad for people. So you just said, it was inconclusive and we moved along.
Well,
right.
To hit on that, Theron, God, I'm glad you brought that up. I say the pharmaceuticals. A lot of those
big pharma.
Whatever. Yeah, I don't. Again, whatever. However you want to fucking frame this. All of the studies, or I think the last statistic I saw that came up. I think the whiskey's hitting the tongue. Might be time for the after show. It might be time for the after show. But
we're cresting up on 2 hours. We gotta be getting close.
Yeah, we are. But no, to hammer it was a lot of these studies that are currently out there in favor or positive favor of standard medicine or SSRIs or antidepressants currently peddled, right? Funny thing about them is a good majority of them are funded by the companies or sister companies that create them.
Follow the dollars.
Right? That they're funded that way. So the research that shows that they're promising could be biased, but secondary that I was finding out that is pretty interesting, and I'm curious what you guys think about this, is that they tend to be more effective when they first come out, and that as time goes on, they seem to be, as more studies come out from other sources, they seem to prove less effective. And why?
You know why? I know why. Ask me why.
Well, Theron, why do you think it is that when a drug first hits the market, it's the newest and greatest thing versus 10, 20 years down the road?
Pharmaceutical representatives. So there are people that get paid to go to your local doctor and talk to them about why this new antidepressant company that they're involved with is fucking great. And it works better than any other antidepressant you've ever heard of. And you should give it to all your clients. And we are so confident about that we're going to actually give your practice X amount of dollars for every prescription you write for this antidepressant. And, a doctor, even, looking at, they genuinely want to help people. They go, well, if this antidepressant works as good as this antidepressant, I get $1,000 a script for this one. Like, all of a sudden, when new medicines come out, they sell like gangbusters, and people love them, and they're great. And every 4 out of 5 dentists recommend. And then,
So
the
true.
longer it's out, you have peer-reviewed studies, and people who aren't getting paid for their opinion start to write papers, and things start to come out, and people who are using it start discussing their experiences, and basically you just don't have enough money to pay them all to say it's a great product.
Right.
Right.
And I think, and to go back a couple steps to the MDMA with the VA, to you, Seth, I'm just to pull the cynical card, right? With the budget cutbacks and restrictions in terms of the VA, do you think it is more advantageous to give someone a solution that actually solves a problem finally now, if we now have less money to continue giving them things that don't work and that make, ultimately we can spend money on and continue getting the budget. If the budget gets cut next year and gets cut again the next year after that, and we know that the projected budget 5 years down the road is $5 million or $50 million less than it was this year, are we now deciding that, well, if we only have if we only have this amount in 5 years, how are we going to save that amount in terms of patients, right? Well,
the devil's advocate would argue that there's less patients over that period of time because the therapy's working.
Exactly. That's where my brain went when I first heard about it, was that, well, if we have less money, how are we going to use that money most effectively? Well, let's start spending less money on less treatments for less patients. And
Right. What if you're helping less people? Then you need less money to help less people.
exactly. So yeah, rather than, I mean, that's just the very cynical, and I wouldn't say that that's the most supported. It was just where my brain first went, but I was just, it's like, I don't know. I guess it's more of a side effect of this whole situation we've put ourselves in, right? Is this distrust of government, of even medicine now, of our doctors and stuff, like you're saying there. And if they're getting $1,000, $10,000 a script, and this medicine may not actually be very effective or may not actually help me at all.
Well, and like I said, to be clear, I'm sure there are some doctors who are unethical, but I think that even the majority of people participating in that aren't doing it from a space that they feel is unethical. They genuinely, from what they're seeing and what's being presented to them, X works as good as Y. They just get more of a benefit for their clinic from X. And like you said, if I'm getting more money for my clinic, then I can help more clients. More patients are seen through. And so I genuinely think that it comes from a place of genuine good intention. But I also believe that the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Well said. Yeah, I agree. I don't think that, at least once it trickles down, there's not nefarious, motives happening per se. But there's an interesting thing happening where there's about 30 psychedelic companies that are publicly traded now. There's about 30 that have something to do with this field or industry. One of them that I really like right now.
Dump all your money into that.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm saying is like, when cannabis was first, decriminalized and there's just a flood. It was like the new gold rush to
the green rush, everybody called
stock
it.
Market.
I remember.
Yeah. You remember that? I think this might be better. And the reason is because of all the studies that have gone into psychedelic research that has all this data to back it up. But there's one company that I really like right now. It's called Cybin, and most of the board members, not
sponsored, by the way.
They should.
Most
they
of the board
be,
members, they come out of the pharmaceutical industry, and there are benevolent people in that big pharma that are like, I'm sick of killing people, probably. I don't know. But they're like, there's something better out there.
And looked in the mirror and was like, I have a soul. I just realized.
Yeah.
They probably had an ayahuasca
trip
with
make money
Seth.
helping people. Right. Exactly. They went down to the ceremony.
Maybe they had an epiphany, they through working with the plant medicine, they came up with like, hey, I'm not living my life the way I should be. And I'm going to change this. But the other board member that's on, the big name board member that's on Cybin's their board is Terrence McKenna, Dennis McKenna. Dennis McKenna, his brother, which is awesome. I love that, because what that tells me is that education is happening. People's minds are opening up, and it has to happen more. The more you educate people, the more they get out of their box. They expand their horizons, and that, I think, is what's going to be the solution: is education.
Well, and I think it's great to see people are putting money into it, and that it is able to be publicly traded, because I think that that's one of the huge things that has helped cannabis become more socially accepted, is that basically politicians realize there's a lot of fucking money in it, and that they're missing out on huge amounts of tax revenue and different things by saying that this is bad. And so, that there's just so much, there's nothing to be gained by saying it's evil, and everything to be gained by decriminalizing it and allowing it in your state. And so I hope to see psilocybin mushrooms follow a very similar track of like, wow, we're like, there's not a good reason to do this. We're going to make money hand over fist if we do it. And that, I mean, even first, I know with cannabis, it started, there was the medical trend first, where states were like, well, you can use medical marijuana if you get your licenses and stuff. And like, I would love to even see that happening with psilocybin to start with, and states like Oregon are a great example, where they are kind of, very similarly, but not anywhere near as drastically adopting the model that Portugal is using, where they're just decriminalizing small amounts of any drug. Basically, if you're not a dealer actively selling it to people, you're probably going to be fine with whatever you have in your pocket. And I think that that's like, for one thing, it just is going to reduce the harm all the way around, from people in jails, from people using spotty amounts of drugs, from people going, oh, I literally have to consume what I have left so I don't get caught with it in my pocket. Like,
Right.
that's how overdoses happen. Like, it sounds dumb, but that shit happens.
There's, you know how many billions of dollars is spent on prosecuting? Like, if they just decriminalize, they would save so much money that could go paying, other stuff, down the national debt, whatever. But
there's a lot of police departments around, like in Washington and Oregon states, that are actually really unhappy with it, because for the past decade they've basically lined their departments with money from raiding fucking pot farms and different things, and it was easy, relatively low risk, and we always made a ton of money off it. And so now that it's becoming legal and they can't do it, they're realizing that, like, oh, we have to start making cutbacks in our departments because we can't afford to keep doing this. And so I've actually overheard people in the local sheriff's departments and stuff talking about how they're like, they're not about it. And if they find an illegal grow, they're going to pursue it 100%, because we need everything. We need to wring every last drop out of it, because we're not getting that money we were before, because it's actually
that's job security,
like education and, places it should go.
Well, that's the thing, is like you stop prosecuting so much, then your force goes down. So jobs are, slightly eliminated, or they can actually take that and, that focus and go after, other stuff. They have more bandwidth to go arrest the real criminals.
And that's what they should do.
Well,
yeah.
Yeah, but like you said,
like I said, a lot
riskier.
of the problem is that it's risky. I know officers who have said to me that they would prefer to bust a pot grow over a meth lab any day, because they know the people at the grow aren't going to come out and shoot them randomly. Like, It's going to be a relatively peaceful thing. One of my favorite little quotes, I don't even remember what marijuana documentary it was on, but it's a cops raiding a grow house or whatever. And some dude drives by and he shouts out the window and he's like, "Go raid a meth lab, pussies." Yeah.
It's true. I mean, it's true. And not to, I don't want to stop this momentum, because we have this has been a fantastic 2-hour show now, but because we are hitting the pumpkin, Cinderella limit of the Scuttlebutt for our normal audience listeners.
Come on, they love a Scuttlebutt podcast double feature.
That's what they're getting. We're getting free streams. We're getting all the incentives. We're getting, like you said, double features in terms of audio.
2 for the price of 1, which is like what, $5 a month on Patreon? It's not very much.
It is not. It is not. You get the free clip. You get the the Scuttlebutt clips for $1, and you get the full live stream. You get all of the early access, and you get the bonus after party show. But enough of the plugs, guys. Let's go ahead and wrap up the main show. And again, I don't want to stop the momentum. I want to talk forever. But for the actual main show, Theron, do you want to do your normal plug?
I think today I'll just plug my YouTube channel. It's Action Cam Experience, or if you just look up Action Cam X, all one word, you'll find us. I just uploaded a video like last week. I think it's our best one yet. I put a lot of work into the thumbnail, so I'm super excited about it.
I agree. I hate to stop the momentum. Don't worry, we're not going to be stopping the live stream, guys. Again, for as long as we can steal Seth away from anything else he's trying to do right now, we're not going to let him. But Seth, how do you want to end the main show for any of the Spotify, Apple, iTunes, Stitcher, Google, all of our listeners around the world? How do you want to end the plug for yourself? How do you want to let people know what's going on?
Yeah, I would just say, if listening to this, if you have a desire to do a significant work with a plant medicine, whether it's ayahuasca, psilocybin, maybe it's San Pedro, it could be peyote, San Pedro cactus, whatever it might be. And that's something that you're just like, I need to do this. There's something to this. Then I would say just reach out to me, and we can talk about, because 80% of it is preparation going into it and integration afterwards. 20% is just the experience. So I would say have somebody with you along for the journey, and you can just reach out to me.
Seth?
Yeah. You can go just sethconnor.com, and Connor spelled with an ER. I know a lot of folks like to spell it with an OR, but it's an ER. So just SethConnor.com. And Seth@SethConnor.com is my email. So that's how you can get a hold of me.
Wonderful. Well said.
Nice and simple, folks.
Exactly. And of course, as everybody knows, Seth, just send over any of the links, anything you want added, links to anything, whether it's sources or otherwise. I add them to the outline, and I always add them to the show notes for the description. So anybody listening right now, wherever you're listening on your podcasts, you just hit that show description, and it's there. I promise you, it's always there. So Seth, thank you so much for fucking joining us tonight. Like I said, for the live stream, we're going to continue. For the main show, you know my usual plug, HermesOzlander.com. I'm working to get us out of the 90s. I know. I've heard the comments, guys. I'm working on it. All right. I have a full-time job, active duty military. They pull some shit, and I don't get to always work on everything all the time. But
so if you want to volunteer to renovate our site, seriously, send us a resume, send us your credentials. I want to see a portfolio, dude. Help us out. We'll shout you out in the episode. We'll get you some free shit.
Hell yeah, actually. This is why I keep saying it. This is why Theron's in charge of marketing.
Yeah. That's awesome.
But at the end of the day, guys, you know the gist, you know the plugs, you know it all. Don't kill the messenger. And that does it for the recording. So if you guys just want to hit record and then hit it right, you want to hit the record button so it stops that one, and then hit it again so that we start the secondary recording for the after hours. That helps with the local recording. It's just a one and done. Theron,
No.
if it's too complicated for you, Theron, to send 2 fucking files, that's fine. It does
Okay,
help.
it's not too complicated. It's just that my potato panics when it has to upload 2 files at the same time.
That's fine. I usually make do. So far I've always made do. It just helped me. So Seth, if you're capable or that's an option, that's awesome. That's what I do for myself. It just splits up the after party show.
You have normal people internet.
Yeah, right.
Done and done. But I did start it like 8 minutes early.
Okay.
I didn't realize you're going to give me the go in the beginning.
You're good.
It was like 8 minutes early. So I was
no
like, it's going to give you some work to do.
There you go. No worries. I like I said, I figure it out. I try to simplify as much as I can on my end, but it rarely works. So at the end of the day,
I feel bad. I need to get like some blinds or something for my office. It was actually sunny today in the Pacific
because it was
Northwest.
so bright. I was noticing that. I was curious.
Dude, my face was all just blown out.
I
Like,
was curious where the
looked like
light
I
was
had a
coming
fucking glamour filter on the whole time or something.
Are you in
no,
Washington or Oregon?
In Washington. Yeah,
Okay.
I live about 100 miles in between Seattle and Portland, so just right off
Man.
I-5.
Yeah, right there.
I used to live in Northern California in Redding.
Sure.
You ever been there?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, man, you got some of the best fungi up in that area. I mean, that stuff
Yeah,
grows
there's a
amazing
lot, like-
there.
I've heard that, it's kind of just in my backyard.
Yeah, absolutely.
I
Go
know, that's the
foraging.
kind of stuff. It's risky, I know it's kind of like, if you mess up, you can mess up bad.
That's right. You want to make sure get a book, make sure you're looking at the right thing. Yeah.
I was gonna
Exactly.
say, and
I
I
leave
never
that to my
fucking
guy.
found him. I never found him. Anytime I was looking for him, or Swim rather was looking for him in Washington State.
No, it's sweet. I have a buddy who goes mushroom hunting all the time, just normal, like just regular edible mushrooms. And he always brings me back like these huge lobster mushrooms. And he'll bring
man.
he'll give me just a sack with like 3 pounds in there. And he's like, that's just like a fraction of what we got today.
Wow.
And it's nuts. Yeah, we were at the store the other day and I pointed out to my wife, I was like, yeah, by the way, those are like $13.50 a pound, by the way. He's just like, here's gold, by the way. Like,
That's
they're like
amazing.
super gourmet shit. But like, I'm not usually a fan of mushrooms. Like, I really like the taste, but just the texture throws me off.
Sure.
And these, they're called lobster mushrooms because they're just exactly like eating lobster. It's the craziest thing.
Huh, I've not tried those yet. I love eating all different kinds of mushrooms, but have not tried those.
I would heavily recommend them.
Okay.
You won't feel
great.
funny, but you'll feel full.
Yeah. Yeah. Man, I tell you what, like fungi in general, like I feel like they all have their own medicinal purpose, like some of them
Sure.
heal, some of them just like fill you up, and they, some of them have immune boosting properties. Some of them take you on trips. Like there's like a mushroom for everything out there. It's crazy. I think they say there's more species of mushrooms than there are any species in all the world combined or something like that of anything.
I've heard
species
that.
of any
Yeah, there's
plant.
just crazy amounts.
Yep.
And their connection, their ability their diversity and then their ability to diversify outside of that, in even in same species is ridiculous. They're just one of the simplest yet most complex life form that Earth has ever created. It's beautiful in a lot of ways. It's beautiful to me anyway.
They say it's like somewhere in between it's not a plant, it's not an animal, but it's somewhere in between. It's got a sentient, it's almost a sentient being, the way it communicates.
Yeah, through
with
mycelium
itself and with through the mycelium, with other plants even. I was like, phew, it's a whole world. Did you guys ever watch Fantastic Fungi?
I actually,
I don't think I have.
I was going to say, I actually, I had it recommended, and then I've heard it on a couple like podcasts and recommendations, and I bought it, and I have yet to watch it.
Yeah, right.
Because for the longest time, it was only in theater. So I was like, wait, and I couldn't go anywhere. I was overseas, so it wasn't obviously.
So yeah, your
offered.
buddy Swim, needs to microdose a little bit. Watch the documentary, kind of really soak it all into your being.
It's funny. So now that we're in the after party show, but we're in the same live stream. My buddy Swim and Morpheus's buddy Swim have talked about the the benefits and the options and the legality and the risks involved in terms of microdosing. And my buddy Swim, being an artist, is like, I don't know how I can. I don't know. He says, I don't know how I can say no. Almost, it's like increasing creativity, increasing, happiness, increasing, empathy. Like there's so many benefits, and being a veteran of
Right, it's like, hey, take this. It makes you a better version of yourself.
Yeah, it's like, I'm not seeing a whole lot of.
How do I say no to that?
Yeah, there are some risks, but there are risks in drinking coffee and caffeine and alcohol and.
I say all the time, the most dangerous thing I do is get out of bed every morning.
It's the truth. It is the truth too. It's so maybe our buddy Swim, maybe I don't know, maybe looking into the same hobby that Seth was mentioning.
Well, I was down with the idea of a Scuttlebutt ayahuasca ceremony, so
yeah,
we're getting that together.
Yeah, right, and doing well, actually, it's going to be in 22.
I've done DMT before, but I've never done ayahuasca, so I would love to get the actual ceremonial experience and not just kind of like the quick and dirty.
Yeah, which is, there's something to that. Like you're like, when you're maybe connecting with entities and really cool stuff. And actually, I know. And I want to be careful about not getting too detailed, but I have a friend who has other friends who work directly with veterans. They can't do it inside the States, but they work strictly with DMT. And like veterans, like special operators will go to this place, and it's a beautiful place. They just at a clinic, and they will work with the DMT, and they're just having really great results, especially with the trauma that, the significant trauma that comes from special operators. But yeah, it's the DMT. But if you want that prolonged experience, you want that kind of like tribal ceremonial kind of like get in touch with kind of that tribal feel, man, ayahuasca is so great for that. But some people just don't like that. You've got your Silicon Valley guys that are like, I just want to take LSD and go walk through nature. And I'm like, all right. To each his own, It
is. I've said before, we even talked about it in other episodes, that I think a huge benefit to refined DMT is how fast it goes. Because for me, when I take psilocybin or when I take acid, that's a plan. I have to set aside a day. But it's more like a weekend because I have to make sure I've got a day afterwards to kind of process what I've just been through and recharge all that energy I just put into this journey I went on. And so with DMT, it's kind of like, oh yeah, I'll just do it tonight and wake up in the morning and, whatever, we're hanging out for the afternoon. I could do a couple of hits of DMT and then an hour later I'll run to the grocery store.
Yeah, right.
And so it's nice for that kind of quick fix, but just knowing that, like you said, there is that kind of prolonged experience out there. I am very interested in it because the quick hits are intriguing. I've seen enough to know that I'm interested. And so now I want to be there long enough to maybe understand what it is I'm actually looking at.
Yeah. And there's so much. that 6 hour experience is like a 20-year trip. You know,
Yeah.
it's a 20-year journey.
Yeah, oh, dude, I mean,
It's amazing.
I can only imagine because, I mean, it's a 15-minute trip with DMT, but it feels like 2 hours. So,
Yeah.
I can only imagine if you're there for 6, it just scales up. Like,
Yep.
yeah, and that, like I said, that's awesome because DMT is one of those drugs where it's like by the time you finally are getting a handle on what is going on in front of you, it's basically over.
Yeah.
Well, that's how.
Yeah.
I'm curious. I don't know what is your experience with salvia, Seth?
Very little. I think I tried it once while I was actually in the Marine Corps.
Yeah.
Salvia is actually like I related a lot to my experiences with DMT, like a crazy amount, honestly. It's a lot rougher.
Well, what all the testimony I've heard from not all, a lot of the testimony, and what you were just saying there with like it's the quick and dirty version, you know, DMT, smoking DMT versus like the prolonged, you know, experience is how I've related salvia and salvia being a pretty potent, well, very potent psychedelic.
It can be if you get the concentrates. Yeah, there's some like nutty ones.
Yeah, so it is one of the more especially naturally occurring psychedelics. But there are multiple ways to take it. Same way there's multiple ways to take DMT, and there are prolonged, you know, ceremonies and you know oral ingestions versus the down and dirty smoking of the high concentrate versions of it, right? And I'm always curious as to, because I've read a couple testimonies on the prolonged versions, like a 6-hour salvia trip, and to me, when I first heard that, I was like, holy hell, how would you even come out of that?
That would be insane,
right?
Like, yeah,
but
like my brain might actually melt,
right? But having said that, it's the different drug though. Like the DMT in 15 minutes is, you know, a mind, you know, like you sit there and you can't even comprehend it. Like you almost by the time you're there,
that is the thing I've always said about salvia. Is that it's like I've always, because I used to work in a head shop, so I used to sell bongs, I used to sell salvia to a lot of kids. Well, they were kids, they were 18. I checked their IDs just to be clear. But you know, they didn't have a lot of experience, and they would ask about salvia, and that's what I would always tell them is it's like compared to a lot of other psychedelics, like compared to mushrooms, it's a really jagged trip. It's abrasive. It happens very fast, and it's slightly terrifying, and it lasts maybe 15 minutes at the most. And so for most people, it's over by the time they're even comprehending what it is that they just saw, and it kind of freaks them out a little bit. And so with that being said, I'm reconsidering the 6-hour salvia trip because I think once you got comfortable with all the weird shit that was happening, it would be really fun, and you could have a bunch of fun with it. Because like I've told this story on the podcast before. I guess we're in after hours, so it's not really the same. Yeah. Anyway, I've taken salvia with Hermes back when we were in high school. It was crazy. I had like a super gnarly trip, but part of it was the dude on the TV who was talking to me turned around and was like, "This is the rest of your life. This is gonna be forever." And like a lot of people, when I say that, they give me that same like facial expression set that you have right now, but I just laugh. Because, like, I've done drugs before. I know I'm not going to be like this forever. I got, like, 10 more minutes tops. Like, I just got to ride this out. Like, and so, for me, salvia has always been really enjoyable because I'm used to doing drugs. And I know that it's a temporary thing. And eventually, my brain will return to normal if I just ride this out. But for a lot of people, with salvia particularly, it's just so abrasive that they can't get around that. It just scares the fuck out of them. And then by the time that they come back to their brain, only thing they can remember is that it scared the fuck out of them.
Fear. Exactly. Yeah.
Well, that happens a lot with DMT too. And honestly, I have not had the chance to do that yet. No, that's not true. I did have the chance, but I didn't do it because I wasn't ready yet. Because I was a little bit like, I don't know how I'm going to do with that. But This is after I've used psychedelics before. The salvia experience I had I must have had bunk shit because it didn't do anything for me. Or maybe those receptors just weren't firing either.
Like Hermes was saying.
Yeah.
Because like the first time, so like I've had 2 dramatically different salvia experiences, and I credit it to how I smoked them. And so the proper way to smoke salvia, if you're really trying to like trip balls and have a fucking rad session, is you want a bong with water and you want a torch lighter, because the heat from the torch lighter really helps activate whatever the fuck it is that makes you trip out.
Well, it's
And so
activated
when
at a
you're using
higher
regular-
temperature. Yes,
Exactly,
to the scientific
yeah, just a
portion,
higher
yeah.
temperature flame, yeah.
Yeah.
And so the first time that I actually had smoked it, it was because me and my buddy were out of weed, and we're like, man, we don't have anything to smoke. We're bored. Let's just go hike out in the woods. We'll take a hike down the forest by where we live. We'll smoke some salvia and see what happens.
As every
And so
great story starts.
We
Yeah,
got all the way out there, and then we realized that neither of us brought a pipe because we didn't have any weed. So why did we bring our pipes with us? And so we ended up.
But you had an
unrolling
apple.
one of his cigarettes. No, we had we had a pack of cigarettes. And yeah, so we basically like backstuffed one of his cigarette wrappers full of salvia and smoked it that way with a Bic lighter. And it was like one of the most mellow trips I've ever had. I basically was just sitting there on a log in the middle of the woods, and I felt like I was in tune with everything all at once. Like I was on the level of all of the little insects crawling around, and then I was with the birds and the trees. I could see the whole forest for mile, like just all the way around. I could see the entire forest all the way down to one little ant crawling on the ground, and everything in the middle all at once. It was rad as fuck. Like it was super mind expanding for sure. Like,
I love that.
and so that was why the next time when Hermes was like, yo, I got some salvia, you want to fucking smoke it? I was real surprised when the dude in the TV started talking to me. And it was funny because we hit it, and like he just had this huge TV in his foyer at the time, and like I look at it and I just start sucking into it, and I was like, no, it's always a bad trip when you go into the TV. Don't look at the scary stuff, like
Morpheus.
That's right.
said,
Don't
yeah.
look at the mirror, man. Don't look at it.
And so I consciously was like, don't go in the TV. And so then the dude on the TV just turned around and started talking to me out of the screen. And like, it was trippy. It was some shit. Like the weirdest part to me, and a lot of people actually report this with salvia, is there's kind of like a repetitive, almost like a rubber banding effect. And so for me, when it was starting to wear off and I was kind of like coming down, because when you're really tripping, you can't even talk. Like if you try, you're just making gibberish at whoever it is that's next to you. Yeah. You're not going to communicate a good thought. And so when I finally was like, oh, I'm coming down, I'm able to talk again. I can actually talk to Hermes and let him know what it is I'm thinking. It was weird because as I was talking to him, telling him about this whole trip that I had just experienced, it was like a record had skipped. And the dude was saying the entire thing, like the whole conversation that we had just had in my mind, he was doing again while I was talking to Hermes, like in the background, subconsciously.
Wow.
Like it was super weird, but just word for word, he was like it was a script and he was just reading it again. And then when it got to the second time, it just skipped and like faded off and was a completely different scene on the show. Like it was Hermes dropped. Swears the TV wasn't even fucking on.
I was gonna say the TV was off the whole time. It was off.
See, who needs TV, right?
Yeah, fun
when you got those experiences, that's in your brain, man. Well, I don't know.
Well,
argue either way, but
all of these stories, like these trip stories. I don't know if you're comfortable, if you'd like to share any, Seth. Now that again we're in the after party show, so the fact that that we have as many viewers as we have, so I just want to thank all of them.
How many viewers do we have?
I'm not gonna tell you. I'll put it in the chat though. I'll put it in the chat. But
fine. I'm just gonna raise the air horn then. I'm assuming it's a good number.
Let's say well, I'm not gonna say anything. I'm just gonna put it there.
He's bashful. He doesn't want to jinx it.
I'm glad you know my superstition.
Dude, what now? Is that a typo?
No, it's not. But again,
now I don't want to jinx it.
long story short, it's all Seth's friends though. He brought them all.
That's wonderful. Thank you.
He brought them all. But
that's funny.
I feel bad that my camera was ass now. Sorry, guys.
If you feel comfortable, like I said, sharing, but before we go around the table sharing trips, the question of which one taps into what, whether it's tapping into like the biological portion of a brain, like it's just hitting a different part of our brain, if it's going in like we talked about with like the woo-woo or the spiritual, if we're going into that portion, is it tapping into maybe different dimension, different previous timelines or experiences, or whatever. Why is it rather? Is it the molecule difference? Is it the brain chemistry of the person? How is it that we have such vastly different experiences, even sometimes with the same molecule, same substance, person to person, yet specifically why salvia fascinates me so much is because there's so much overlap. What is it and why is it? I don't know. Again, these are just theories. These are just what we're thinking here. Why is it there's so much of these overlaps for people? To me, it's like there's got to be something going on.
And
there.
like I alluded to with my story, that repetitive thing is like a lot of people who do salvia report like repetitive actions in their trips.
Yeah.
Like for some reason things happen over and over. And I didn't know that at the time. That wasn't like a preconceived idea that I took into my trip. I had no idea. That was something I heard after the fact when I was describing to people what had happened to me. And they're like, oh yeah, that happens a lot.
Yeah, it's common that is referred to as the wheel. Is a common description or a feeling, because salvia is a fucking trip and a half, tell you. And why I'm so curious, or excuse me, why Swim's so curious of DMT is that whole disillusion of oneself, completely devoid of your consciousness, your body, your anything of this plane. It's just boom. Nope. What you thought? Nah. Not happening right now. Even as you come back, the recollection of it, the description of it, all of it is secondary to the experience, and why Swim is so interested in DMT, because a lot of those similarities overlap with salvia. And salvia, again, they describe it as like the wheel, where it's like that repetitive cycle of something, whether it's like a memory or a phrase or whatever it is. It's like Theron was saying, it's like a record on repeat. Another one is zippering, where it's like reality or your brain or your whole being or whatever, the universe sort of splits into two, and now you're basically feeling the split like you were part of the zipper and now you're two things, or you're opening a veil into another dimension and all these things. I'm curious, because you've never done salvia, or you don't have that experience with salvia, Seth, I'm guessing, but
right.
Myself and Swim doesn't have any experience with DMT. I'm curious what the overlap of those two are, and if any, maybe.
One thing I'm curious if you ever heard of, Seth, is that I've heard with DMT that like people, apparently there's like a certain fractal pattern that like everyone sees, and everyone's like, oh yeah, I saw the same. And now, to be fair, I couldn't point at a fractal pattern and be like, that's what I saw when I was on DMT. I saw fractals for sure, but I don't remember them necessarily. But that's the thing I've heard from people, is that like, oh, there's basically a shape. It's like a piece of geometry that's kind of just built into our DNA. And so when people are tripping off DMT, they all kind of see it. Have you heard that before?
I haven't. I'm even just curious, why fractals? Why do we see fractals? What is actually going on? And I mean, I could speculate and say,
speculate.
Well, I mean,
we're
when you're talking about like
the code.
Yeah, well, I mean, I wonder if there's something to that on a hyper spiritual or ethereal level, like a messaging, like a ancient geometry or something. I don't know. I mean, I would only be able to guess at maybe what that is, if it is a form of communication. I've seen fractals being a form of some sort of communication. I don't know, but I think that someone else, and maybe a biochemist who has an answer for why certain experiences work with certain plant medicine, or you experience certain things with certain plant medicine.
We'd love to have you on the show.
Yeah. If they've got a good answer for that, I would absolutely be open to it. But if you were to talk to some indigenous tribal person, they would say that there's a spirit for every plant. There's a spirit. So when you're working with ayahuasca, you're working with the queen of the forest, Mother Aya, and you are working with the spirit of that. If you're working with, fungi, same thing, and so it's almost like these helpers, these spirit helpers, these guys are there to help you with a specific thing, or to help you in a specific way.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So again, there's folks that don't, subscribe to the woo woo or even spiritual things in general, and so they want a scientific answer for that, and I don't know if there's one out there.
I'm curious
necessarily.
Mike, if you're still in the comments, I'm very curious your thoughts on this because you obviously are very in tune with the spiritual and very, adept at the spiritual side of things. But I'm curious for you, Seth, would you describe or compare in your different psychedelic experiences? Would you compare different substances to having those essences rather? Like, would you describe like DMT as having a feminine or a teacher's mentor type of presence, and then maybe psilocybin having I've heard, and I would not disagree with it, having a more playful or like mischievous type of presence. Like, how would you agree to those things? Would you agree to those?
Well, you look at where they come from, and actually the Native Americans, they contribute a specific kind of personality to peyote that's got more of a I believe it's more of like kind of like a grandfather type of spirit to it, whereas with ayahuasca it's very feminine. It's a feminine thing. And then you've got San Pedro, it's the cactus again has more of a masculine. And then you look at like DMT and where you synthesize it from. A lot of you can get DMT from like the Colorado desert toad, Colorado desert toad or the Sonoran toad. And you can contribute
frogs, bro.
Yeah, and when you're working with it, it's kind of like, okay, what kind of, is it a masculine energy? Is it a feminine energy that you're working with? If it is a feminine, then you're going to work with it differently than you would with, say, San Pedro. And so absolutely, I absolutely think that, but I think that comes from thousands upon thousands of years and millions of people using it.
What a fucking excellent question. I just have to say, I would have never thought of that. In my experience with psychedelics, I've never contributed any of those characteristics to them personally, but I'm going to be a lot more open to it now because I could see it. I certainly understand how that could be a thing. It's just never even crossed my mind before. So
yeah, fungi, question. Like the history behind, a little bit of history behind how fungi got so popularized here came from Maria Sabina, the kind of the shaman worker down in Mexico, and that was normal for them to work with those. But she would always call them like little saints, like little helpers, and so I don't know. I will always kind of contribute it to kind of like young, wise. Little helpers or saints or something with a little bit more masculine energy. But it's funny because it's like one of the oldest organisms supposedly in the world, and so to have this kind of like youth to it for such an ancient thing. But they're constantly born every day, they're fruiting all over the place. And so
yeah,
it's so interesting to think about too. It's like
like I said, I'm definitely feeling my mind expand here and just thinking about so many things and just kind of the prospects of, because to get back into kind of that like thing of like when I did DMT and like really blasted off and like seriously got to that point, like I do feel like I met my spirit guide and I had a deep discussion with that animal and he basically was like, everything's gonna be cool, bro, just ride it out. And like even right there I said but it's never consciously occurred to me to be like, I wonder what gender my spirit animal is. Right. Like I genuinely never fucking thought of it.
Interesting.
And it comes down to the classical archetype for salvia is a feminine one, specifically in more of the smoking realms and like the more intense realms is definitely more feminine, but yet you get, or am I mixing the two of it? No, I might be confused.
I was gonna say salvia's a bitch if it's a female. Then rather than no, the prolonged ones are more of like the maternal, warming, like very coddling type, and then and smoking is more like the intense, genderless, maybe even like you're saying, a bitch of a trip and a half. But it leads me, and then of course comparing to like psilocybin or even LSD and seeing the differences in them. Maybe like you're saying there, and maybe it's like
were pulling in a gender, and because you hadn't thought about it or hadn't heard of it or considered it or whatever, you didn't have one, so you're like never thought of it. Looking back on it now, maybe you're like, oh, maybe that was
and that's
a masculine type of.
Looking back on it, I honestly couldn't like the experience is the same. I can't really assign any kind of new feelings or assumptions to it at this point. I've kind of come to my understanding of it, but like it's just weird because like when I'm walking down the street, if you see a person, or shit, if I see somebody walking their dog, I'm like, I wonder if that's a boy dog or a girl dog. Like our society is kind of just organized by gender, for better or worse. And like, so it's just, to me, it was mind-boggling to realize that I had never even asked myself that question.
Well, let's think about like MDMA.
Yeah,
it's it's an amphetamine.
Think about it.
Yeah, right. It's an amphetamine, but it evokes feelings of compassion, empathy, things like that, not only for self but for others. But that is a synthesized. That's a synthesized element from a plant. And if you guys know what plant it comes from?
It's sassafras, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
So it's a saffron oil that is essentially extracted from the sassafras plant. And I think there's another plant. I know in like Cambodia, it's like native to Cambodia. Yeah, right. There you go. But it's like I could see them contributing more of a feminine spirit or essence to the sassafras plant, or tree, whatever. And because of the way it makes them feel, right? And that has that more feminine, empathetic, nurturing, compassionate kind of energy to it. So just an idea, again, speculating, but
right.
Yeah.
And Hermes, I ever tell you about when I did MDMA at my friend's grandma's like 90th birthday party?
No.
It was pretty rad. I'd recommend it.
MDMA, I recommend regardless. I don't care what setting. I would always recommend MDMA.
So basically, it was my best friend's grandmother's birthday party, and he was like, "Oh, hey, come on, you should come with us." Like, she specifically invited you. I've been to her house as a kid like a ton, so she's basically family. Like, she invited me personally. I can't not go. Yeah. And so he's like, "Whatever, it's at the casino. Come on. Well, there's an open bar. We'll drink. It'll be fun." And so we get there, and it is decidedly not the casino. It's like an Elks Lodge. Like, It is the opposite of a casino. Right. And he was like, "Well, fuck it, dude. I brought some Molly. Like, you want to do some Molly before we go in?" And so I just said, "Send it," like, yeah, let's all do so. Him and his girlfriend and me and my girlfriend all fucking rubbed some Molly on our gums and rolled right in. And it was a great party. It was a banging 90-year-old's party. Yeah.
Was it MDMA or was it like, Molly? Was it a cut? Was it a pure?
It probably was cut. Yeah. Like, I doubt that it was pure. No, I'm sure that there was probably just a little normal amphetamines in there.
Right.
But it was just because, like, Hermes knows we grew up in a very small town. Like, our graduating high school class was 32 people.
Yep.
I'm not even fucking kidding.
Nope.
Like,
yeah, no exaggeration there.
And so it was super weird because my friend's grandma was like a figurehead of the community. So as we're rolling into this party, I'm seeing like my fourth grade teacher, like all these people who I've known my entire life who are like, "Oh, hey, how you doing? Are you successful now as an adult?" And I'm just rolling on fucking Molly trying to talk to him. Like,
I just love you. Let's just hug and forget about it.
I'm doing great. I feel wonderful right now. Like, at one point I went to the bathroom and looked in the mirror and was like, "Wow, my pupils are very different sizes. I wonder if anyone else has noticed that." Like,
oh man, that's funny.
No, it got to a point where like I was just so tired of talking to people because like it was just, and Hermes can relate when you live in a small town and people are like, "Oh, I knew that kid." Like they all just want to come talk to you for some reason. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it got to the point where I just was like randomly pointing at pictures that they had set out of like his grandma's childhood to my friend to be like, "Tell me about this thing." And then people would walk by and I'd be like, "Cool, we just don't have to talk to people. Like we'll just pretend we're having a conversation about whatever's going on right here."
That's hilarious.
It goes back to one of those I don't know, less than mature settings right there, where you look back and you're like, that was a great time, but don't know if I'd recommend or
No,
or
100%.
no.
See, and that's the thing. It's not that at all. That was a great time, and I would recommend it again.
Yeah.
Right now, like, you're like, hey, bro, we got a 90-year-old's birthday party to go to. I'd be like, sweet, who's got the Molly? Like,
But see, where you can handle that, maybe the majority of the population wouldn't be able to handle that kind of setting, you know?
Exactly.
Like, where you're going in with a good mindset and you can
see,
handle the
that's
setting.
like-
But
I absolutely, like I was saying with Salvia earlier, like attributed it to mindset. That like I've just done enough things that I know how to be normal even when I don't feel normal.
yeah.
And
that's the same with me.
With the
Like, I've
level of
worked with it enough.
responsibility, you have to know that like just because I'm pretending to be normal, still shouldn't drive. Like
Yeah.
don't pretend to be that normal. Like
Yeah. Responsibility.
Yeah.
and so that's I think that's where experience comes in. Where once you get to that point where you're like, I can fake it as good as I need to, you need to know, okay, but like peel it back a little bit. 'Cause there's definitely like I remember, you know, being in my car being like, wow, I shouldn't be driving right now. Like that's like a poor decision and I'm not gonna make it in the future. Like I'm really glad I got home.
Jesus.
Man, when I was it's funny because I only worked with like cannabis maybe a few times in high school. And they were so significant that like I was like, I don't even know if I can do this anymore. I mean, going to school, high off my ass, and sitting in a computer programming class, I just stared at X's and O's and lines for like an hour and a half. And I'm like, I'm not productive. I can't get anything done on this. Like, this is not working, but I wonder if I was on something else.
That wasn't cannabis at all. Like I needed cannabis to be productive at school or else I just couldn't even function. And so, but like I knew people exactly like you were describing where it's like, dude, I can't. It was funny. People and Hermes can relate to this because I remember we talked about it of people being like, oh, dude, you're acting kind of funny. Are you stoned today? And it's like, nah, bro, I ran out of weed. And I'm actually sober and I'm really pissed off. Leave me alone.
I remember so specifically our English teacher was like, I don't know why you're this way. I don't care why you're this way, but go fix it. And he was like, all right, cool. And he comes back reeking of cannabis. All right, we good.
We good, yeah.
And I was like, yeah, that's my bad. And
That's
again,
funny.
I remember so specifically our English teacher, a cool guy, great guy, was like,
He was great, yeah.
and he was just like, all right, now you ready to work? Like, what's an adjective?
What do we do? Well, and that's the thing is like I TA'd for him. Like he knew my level of like what was up. No, and that's I again, small town, so I lived right there in town. I could just walk from school to my house during our lunch break. And so like every day my lunch was just a fucking can of Coca-Cola and bong hits.
No way. That's funny.
And like I would just come
He's
back
not
to school
joking.
just rip. No, yeah, not at all, dude. I
did it like
hand to God,
once or
like-
twice with him, and I was with you, Seth. I was like, I don't know how you do this. I applaud you, and I'm in awe that you do this. But
Yeah.
I cannot. I have to go to football practice, bro. I can't fucking. There's no goddamn way. Like I can go to fucking calculus like this. It's not happening.
The best part is like, dude, I swear the teacher after I came back from lunch, he had to know because it was like he was super strict. He's like, no food or drink in my class at all because he was tired of people spilling stuff. You remember your history teacher?
I do.
And yeah, I would come in after lunch just ripped out of my mind with a can of Coke that wasn't open. And so like I'd come in and wait, and I sat all the way in the back of the room because obviously I'm a stoner. And he'd be talking, giving whatever the lesson was, talking about whatever we were doing today, and I'd wait for him to stop, like so I wouldn't interrupt him. And then breaking the conversation, I would just, and you could hear in the whole class they crack open.
Just
Like-
heads just turning. Just what?
Just waiting. So you were that guy, Theron. You were that guy.
And so he would just keep teaching, and I would keep drinking, set it on the little table behind me like it was good. Because like I don't know what it was, but when he was like the very first time he was describing how he didn't like food and drink in his classroom, it just clicked to me that he doesn't like people sharing shit and distracting class, and he doesn't like spilled stuff in his classroom. So like as long as I'm not doing either of those two things, I'm golden. And like, it's not even like he didn't know, because at the end, like I would finish my soda and then I would walk up to his desk, crush it, throw it in the trash can and be like, hey, I have a question about number 4. Like,
Man.
And everyone was like, dude, how do you do this? Like,
Yeah. Theron was one of those functional stoners throughout school, for sure. I was gonna ask, as you were saying that, Theron, I was curious. Like, Seth, what trip stories do you have? Do you have the old school? Do you have the old school like I don't know, Theron stories? Do you have the do you have the fuck with the teacher, fuck with the parents type of deal coming from your religious background? Because I remember similarly, I don't know, stories like that. Coming.
I remember one time Hermes was at my house and he was getting ready to leave, and he's like, "Dude, do you have any Visine?" I was like, "What? No? Like what?"
Yeah, you're like, I don't have to hide it here. I was like, yeah, but I have to go home, and like my parents are military, and
not
and
only
fucking.
do I not care, but I've been smoking weed so long, my eyes don't even get red anymore. Like, who needs Visine?
I was like, bro, you don't understand right now what I'm walking into, but please. But no, like I was saying, do you have those like fun trip stories, fun high stories? I don't know.
God, now
maybe
we're just
not
smoking
cannabis.
with your dad.
Yeah. Man, there's 2 times that kind of pop out to me. One was just actually like being in high school, because alcohol was like my favorite, thing there. So I'd come home early and he'd be up, and I would, and he's trying to figure out if something fishy going on with me. And as a police officer, you would think that he's like pretty clued in to these things.
He's right there.
So I'm like, so he says hi, and I go up to my room, and I stand in the doorway of my room because he's following me to my room. And we just commenced to have this conversation for what seemed like, 15, 20 minutes. And I'm just waiting for him to just like call me out, because I'm and nothing ever happens. He said goodnight, and I went to bed, and I was like, either I'm that good at hiding it, or he was just off his game that night or something. But that was more alcohol. But the one funny story I have around smoking cannabis was I was actually on probation in high school, and so I'd have random drug tests, right? And there was one time I just thought, okay, my next probation meeting, she's not going to test me. And so I smoked like maybe like a few days before, maybe a week before, something like that. And I get into the probation meeting, and she's like, "You're getting tested today."
Here's the cup.
Just like she wasn't really mean. She was just like, "You're getting tested today, so make sure you test on the way out before you leave." I'm like, "I'm not testing. I just go. I leave, and I get home, and she's calling me, going, "You can't run out on a test. You can't do that. You have to come in and test tomorrow." I'm like, all right, well, at least it bought me some time. So at that time, I'm hearing like niacin works and cranberry juice works and vinegar. Vinegar. Yeah. So I'm like, all right, I'm just going to do that. So I chug like vinegar and like cranberry juice or something that next day before going to the meeting. This is so embarrassing. Well, let's just say that things started to happen down there, and I was just like, oh man, what is going on? Like my stomach, I've never taken in that much vinegar before, at one time. And so my buddy, he's going to take me because I didn't have my license at the time. I actually lost it for drinking and driving. Yeah, see, that was that kid, right? And so he's taking me to my probation meeting, and we got to go pick up his girlfriend first. I'm glad this is not on your podcast, but
this is what the after is for.
Yeah, this is exactly what it's for.
And you could talk about it when it's like 20 years removed,
right?
But we go and we knock on her door, and I'm like, I feel like I have to fart, and it was a shart, and I sharted. And I'm like, oh my God. Like, I was like, dude, things are bad now. And so she opens the door. I'm like, can I use your restroom? And she's like, yeah.
Real
So I
talk,
go
what
in
a
there.
great way to avoid a drug test, though. Just shit your
Yeah,
pants.
right.
Like, no PO,
I didn't
no
think
one
about
can
that at the
hear
time.
you.
Well, he's probably like, okay, what did you drink to make you shart yourself, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're trying to avoid something. But anyway, I ended up like cleaning myself up. But I'm like, I can't wear these now because they're all, and so I'm like, I'm just gonna have to ditch them. And I threw them underneath her sink.
We'll just
And
flush 'em down
left.
the toilet, it'll be fine.
Yeah.
Still
And
didn't
we
test.
just laughed. And never heard anything about it from her, but needless to say, they never made it as a couple. So that's
that's
one
awesome.
funny story. But
That one
yeah,
is fucking phenomenal.
I don't think I have many more other than that.
How about this?
Yeah.
How about lessons?
No, that was one. Before we change topics, I just have to say that's one thing that I always hated about Hermes, because like he was talking about playing football and stuff. He doesn't talk about it much. My boy was a star athlete, like to the point where they actually were literally drug testing him for performance enhancing drugs before
Wow.
high school games and shit. And
Really?
a result of that, it meant that he couldn't fucking piss dirty for weed before these games either, because like even though that's not what they're looking for, it's just a general panel.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so this motherfucker would like smoke with me on Wednesday night and then play on Friday and like piss clean. And I'm like, dude, how are you? And he's like, yeah, dude, I have like 6.5% body fat. It's like, well, good for
Wow.
you, motherfucker. Like,
That's
He's
probably a
making-
good thing because it hides in the body fat, right?
yeah, exactly. No, it worked out great for him, but it's like, man, I smoke so much, I could actually not smoke for 30 days and I would still piss dirty just because of the way that it metabolizes. Like, there's just so much stored up in my fatty parts that I couldn't fucking possibly do it. And yeah, he's like, oh, whatever, I'll pee clean in a day and a half, whatever.
I used to.
Wow.
That's actually where the hump joke came from, didn't it? It's like,
yeah, I remember that, my THC hump.
yep. I was like, it was a
One
mix
day
of a lot
he's
of
like,
things.
Dude, he's like, you're like a camel, bro. You know, camels, they don't need water for days because they just store it in their hump. That's like you, whenever you need to get high, you just release a little THC from your camel hump.
Exactly.
hilarious.
You've built up that hump over these years. I was like, I was like, that's how you actually get through life. It's like anytime you're short, you just pull from that hump and
The
you're
reserve.
That was when I did that thing where I was like chaperoning a bunch of little kids, so I couldn't smoke for like 3 days. And he's like, you got your hump, bro.
You'll be fine. You'll
Yeah.
be fine. It won't
Just
be
pull on that.
Yeah, it won't be pleasant, but your body will
Yeah.
function. You'll be good.
That's hilarious.
I was so to change and fuck, he's, by the way, for any of the for the X amount again listening, watching, appreciate you, but Theron is lying. That never happened. I was not a sports athlete at all. That
What?
doesn't happen. And you know what, fun fact, look it up, you'll never find Hermes Auslander in any sports book. So
Dude, I swear to God, I will start
Don't.
dropping redacted yearbook shit. Like,
I was gonna say, I have my mouse over the mute. Fucking tempt me. It's right there. Fucking tempt me.
I got Photoshop. We'll make it say Hermes Auslander.
But no, to change it up, switch it up, lessons, man, because a lot of the show we went through, and obviously we're wrapping up, is what lessons do you pull from psychedelics, from substances in general? What lessons have you pulled and that you could share with some of the viewers right now, and, that we could actually, I don't know, especially those that are on the fence, because I have a couple of family members that again, I come from a religious background as well, and specifically, a military background, where a lot of family members, even if they should, or in my opinion could benefit from psychedelics specifically, or alternative therapies.
Oh yeah,
Like
me
you
and your
said.
mom dropped acid. Did I ever tell you about that?
Yeah, bullshit. Mom, you may be listening right now. I did tell you this was going on, so if you're listening, yeah, I know that's bullshit. So don't worry. I'm covering you. Don't worry. But
Next time,
no,
well.
yeah, right. I wish, right? I hope. Maybe, but like I said, yeah, they're out there, and like you were talking about earlier in the show, Seth, it's like you know, they have this preconceived notion, they have this stigma, they have whatever it is that they have, and you know, I don't know, what would you say to them, or what lessons would you convey to them that maybe someone somewhere out there listening right now, of the X amount that are listening, that may be on the fence? What would you, I don't know, how would you pull from that?
Well, I guess to preface that is that, you know, I can talk about those folks who are, you know, for lack of a better term, closed-minded, or just, I use that term because I used to be that term.
Me too.
You
Too.
know,
Yeah.
I was a rigid, at one point, religious asshole. And I think that you just kind of get to a place where you, hopefully your exploration, your desire to explore and be, you know, somewhat adventurous, that you just kind of lean into that and not be so afraid of the, don't be so afraid to push into the rigidity that you know, or the programming that you know. Like, it was hard for me. The couple of years that I was doing my deconstruction of my faith was hard. It was scary. I was like, am I backsliding? And, you know, am I going to hell? You know, that kind of thing.
Totally.
The first time I ever questioned my salvation, you know? And so, but I had to know. And the cool thing is that in my relationship with, you know, the Jesus archetype or whatever, or just spirit, like, I would run ahead and I would kind of always look back and just make sure, like, everything's, you still cool if I'm going out and trying, you know, new things and discovering new things. I think it's important that you allow yourself to explore. Like, you can be safe about it. You can be cautious and smart about it, but open yourself up. Yeah. I mean, open yourself up to just new things and take baby steps. The mantra that I've developed for me, and this is something that I've learned, is out of everything that I've researched, out of everything that I've known to be true at one point or another, the one thing that I always come back to is the fact that I don't know shit. I don't know a damn thing. Everywhere in my life where I thought I was sure about something was essentially proven wrong, or at some point. And so I just kind of I'm like, okay, that is such a humbling place to be. That's such a freeing place to be. And when you look back, you realize,
climb that mountain.
You realize I was so programmed by church, by society, by people in my life that I gave authority, you know, status to. I was so programmed. And now I get to take ownership and go, okay, what am I going to unlearn, unteach myself? And what do I want to begin to, you know, to learn? And just know that, hey, it might be proven wrong. So psychedelics really helped with that. And so I would encourage people that if you want to, you don't need to be afraid. You know, you can do it in a wise way, where you don't have that stigma of drug use, you know, that we get in popular culture. That there's baby steps that you can take. You can start off by microdosing. You can, and you know, if you're a little more adventurous, you can take a little bit more. If you want to go full board like I did and just, you know, throw caution to the wind, at least you're doing it like going ayahuasca. At least you're doing it in a setting where it's still controlled, you know,
with experience.
But don't be afraid. Don't be afraid, and just let go of all expectations going into it. That's really where bad trips come in, is when you're resisting the experience, when you get scared of what's going on, because it's disorienting at times. Bad trips happen when you start resisting and getting scared. And if you just let go and just let the medicine take you where it wants to go, you have an incredible experiences, you know? So anyway, I don't know if that helps any. I'm not much of an evangelizer in that regard, but
I can totally say I'm not the expert or anything, but my message to people, anyone who's curious to try psychedelics, you have everything to gain and nothing to lose.
Okay.
And it's that simple.
Your potato went out for a second there. But then
right,
I think you have nothing. Go ahead. Sorry. And the potato went out again. Potato is not cooperating. I
wow,
think
what is he saying?
he is
What is he
potato.
saying?
Potato
Am
went
I
out.
back? Did I fix it?
I was gonna say you grew a spud. Potato was
I
in
did.
there.
I think I fixed it. We had to crosswire a couple of potatoes, but we got it figured out. We got it sorted. We rebooted the potato. But my message to anyone who's interested in psychedelics is really simple, and it's that you have everything to gain and nothing to lose.
Okay.
And that's just a small anecdotal story. Again, going back to that Grateful Dead concert, I actually was at one here in Washington and saw, a bunch of people obviously just tripping balls on all kinds of different substances hanging out. And there were thousands of people in this crowd, all on various psychedelics. And it was nuts because, for one thing, it's the worst white people dancing that you've ever seen ever. just tons of white hippies gyrating in random directions. It was awful. But more to the point is like just the unity and like the lack of conflict was so incredible. And I'm sure we've all been to concerts. We've all been to that kind of environment where you have that many people. I watched a lady walk over to the food court, get herself some like nachos, whatever food for her and her friends. And she was carrying back like an armful of food past a group of dancing hippies. And he literally backhands the stuff out of her hand, like full on, not on purpose. He was just in the zone and like flailed his arm out. And she looks at him just dead for 1 second. And then starts like weird hippie dancing just right with him. Just like I thought it was going to be a conflict. I thought for sure that there was going to be a fight that was about to happen and stuff was about to go down. But no, they just realized they're like, oh, we're on the same level. Like, whatever. Let's just fucking vibe.
I see the unicorn you were dodging there. I get it. We good.
Yeah, exactly. She was like, I get it, man. Absolutely. Like I don't even think she went and bought more food. She just walked off after that. Like,
so that is a amazing illustration of conflict that could be, the way to handle conflict in this world. Everybody wants to pick up a gun and go shoot people.
Could do that without drugs, that would be awesome.
Yeah, but So, some of the most influential people in our world, especially in the technology age, all used psychedelics on some, and that's more blanket, but a majority of them did. I mean, they had microdosing Fridays in Silicon Valley for decades, and so much of the solutions and stuff that we use today, like using your Uber or your phone, that came out of some sort of psychedelic experience that somebody had and innovation.
Balls and was like, man, I wish I could just call a car here right now.
Right. So
how cool would it be if I just poked my phone and a car showed up?
No, I totally agree that the biggest, or a vast array, or a pool of solutions that we could draw from are these abstract outside of the box thinking. And like you said, I mean, just historically, a lot of them have come from these psychedelic experience, these tools that we otherwise don't and scientifically speaking, psychedelics connect parts of the brain that otherwise don't talk to each other. So, I mean, it's not crazy. It's not woo-woo. It's not anything else to say, that these things do create solutions, that do create new ways of thinking, creativity, all these things, microdosing or macrodosing. There are places and uses for all of these things. There are abuses, sure, as I will say.
But like anything,
you can abuse
water.
And
I think it's great that people are coming forward and, really talking about it. Because, with these people in Silicon Valley, like, they weren't upfront about it at first. That's something that's coming out decades after the fact. And so, it's like, it's super cool to see people who are like, oh, that was a revolutionary idea you had. And they're like, yep, I was on psilocybin.
That was acid. Sydney told me that one.
Yeah.
So I would just say, I guess I would leave it as just say, you know what, if you're on the fence, just educate yourself, be open to it. And with education comes empowerment. So you can go into something feeling empowered to do it, Yeah. So usually when you start looking into it, it demystifies it. That's the problem, is it's so mystical. Like it's unknown. It's got this mystified element to it. And that's why people are just like, well, I don't understand it, so I'm moving away from it. But if you start to understand it,
to me, so
yeah. But once you start understanding it, like, it demystifies it. You're like, oh, well, that's not a big deal. And then you're open and great things happen after that. So
I can't say anything further from that. It's beautifully said, Seth. I love it. I love it. I mean, we're hitting everybody on the. I see the live stream; it just keeps going up, but I don't want to stop.
It just
but
keeps climbing.
I don't want to stop, but at the same time, we're. I mean, I think ultimately this is a testament. Like Seth, this has been obviously a fantastic episode. We could obviously talk forever.
Excellent. It was wonderful meeting you, Seth. I've appreciated talking with you tonight, and I thank you so much for lending us your time.
Yeah, it is. We could go forever. Again, so if you ever want to talk, you ever want to hang out, you ever want to have a beer, whatever. If you're ever in the area,
Scuttlebutt's always around.
Always around. It's always a safe space for you, for anybody else. Again, I just from the bottom of my heart, thank you. Appreciate the fuck out of you, man. Do you have any final tidbits or thoughts or plugs? Yeah.
I just want to say thank you.
No.
Yeah, this was a lot of fun. I didn't think we were going to go 3 hours, but I did, I'm like, why get off? Like, we're doing great here, but
it just rolled off. It just rolled off.
The conversation just keeps going and going and moving into the next thing. But yeah, you guys are awesome. I had so much fun with you guys tonight. I wish Morpheus could stay on longer. But so that's a shout out to him. But
his wife,
I say,
he's got some things to do with his wife. That's
priorities. Gotcha.
Priorities, exactly.
But yeah, we'll have to schedule
they're doing psilocybin right now.
yeah. Hey, they say that couples that do psilocybin together stay together.
Mm-hmm. So there's a trip together, stay together. Yeah,
trip together. Yeah,
real talk. My wife did psilocybin mushrooms at our wedding ceremony.
You know what? I think that may be in the cards now for my buddy Swim and his fiance.
No, like I did personally, but she's like, when I do mushrooms, I just feel more comfortable around crowds, and there's a lot of people, so let's do. And yeah, so we did our ceremony, and then right afterwards with the reception, we had pizza, and so she's just like, yeah, and so I'm like trying to like casually put them on our pizza so no one will notice. She's like, just put them on there, and I was like, it's our wedding. Like, there's hundreds of people taking pictures of us right now.
Yeah, right.
And so her friend literally just grabs them out of my hand and dumps the whole bag on her pizza.
No.
There you go. And so she had a great time, but it's fucking hilarious. Maybe I'll get it to Hermes to put it in the show notes. But there's a picture.
We'll edit as needed.
One of our wedding pictures of her holding half a slice of pizza that's just covered in mushrooms. Like,
gosh, that's great.
And to this day, I wonder if any of the guests have noticed we didn't have any mushroom pizza.
No,
that wasn't a menu option.
Yeah, that's right. We're thinking of that pizza. Custom.
So again, Seth, thanks a million, man. Thanks a million.
Pleasure.
Yeah.
Really. And Theron, anything final? Anything final? I'm gonna go ahead and end this broadcast and take us off live.
I miss my buddy Morpheus. I wish he was here. I feel
we'll do it
empty
again.
without him.
We'll do it again. And again, Seth, you're welcome anytime. I had a blast. The audience had a
again.
blast.
100%.
It's going up.
This was great, Seth.
Yeah.
I always love talking about drugs. Any day of the week.
Yeah. I can tell. That's great, man. Let's do it again.
So much love. And as we always end the after party show, slanty, cheers, salute. I appreciate the fuck out of everyone here. Let me get this in the camera. Again, cheers, guys.
Have a good one.